What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Patriots Post-Draft Party. I'm Doug Kyed, joined by my co-host, Andrew Callahan. Andrew, we've got some great guests coming up where this is all for a great cause for my Leukemia Lymphoma Society Visionaries of the Year campaign. We'll get into all the details in a second. But Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Look, I gave the Patriots draft an A-. My goal is to get at least that here with the show. And I feel like I know I'm riding shotgun here with you as the co-host. I just need to get to the back seat when we bring up Mina and Sam and Steve and Danny. Maybe Phil. Mike Giardi somehow stumbled into this. But like this is going to be an awesome night. I'm glad we're recovered from the draft and ready to party about the draft.
Yeah, definitely. We will be discussing the Patriots draft. It's been it's pretty amazing. I think they've like in the consensus draft grades, it was number 1 overall. I saw everyone's giving it an A, high Bs. They only saw one grade that started with a C. So Mike Vrabel, Elliott Wolf, Frank Catter, and co did a very good job. But let's get into some of the nitty-gritty details here real quick. First of all, shout out to CLNS. This is a CLNS media production. Shout out to John Zanis, to Amit, to everyone there at CLNS. They've been a huge help. You can donate. This is a fundraiser for LLS. You can donate in one of two ways. First of all, you can send a super chat, ask us questions, ask Mina questions, ask Danny Kelly and Danny Heifetz, Sam Monson and Steve Palazzolo, all of our local guests, Michael Hurley, Mike Giardi, Phil Perry, Taylor Kyles, all through super chats. If you send in any $10 donation, so any combination of tens, you get a raffle ticket for a Patriots football signed by Kendrick Bourne and many of his Patriots teammates. Really cool raffle prize. So if you donate $50 either to princesshalleeforever.com or via super chat, you get 5 ticket entries. So really cool prizes as part of this. But also, yeah, like I said, you can donate via super chat or going to princesshalleeforever.com. Those are the two ways to donate. And we're just trying to raise as much money for LLS and my Visionaries of the Year campaign as possible.
Yeah, here's the thing. There's kind of an unwritten rule about this when we say you can ask any question and we'll answer it if you donate $10 to the cause. You could break the unwritten rule of like that can literally be anything. You know, like this is for a good cause. If it incurs some embarrassment along the way or some awkwardness, as long as it makes for a better show, why not? So this is your chance, whether it's the two of us, anybody that Doug just listed, all the money is going to a good cause. We will be on here for at least 2.5 hours, cycling through the guests, talking about the Patriots draft. And it's up to you. Like if you donate $10, not only do you get a question answered, but you have a chance to win that football, which I know Kayshon Boutte signed, Jelani Tavai signed, maybe not the first or third player I should be listing here, but Hunter Henry is on there. Like there are a lot of players on this Patriots sign ball that it should immediately go into glass, but you need to donate $10, super chat, or to Doug's campaign. You'll find the link in the description. We're going to be saying this a lot throughout the night. So if you don't remember, don't worry about it. But the point is, this is a great night, an even better cause, and you can be a part of it in the best possible way.
Definitely. So we've got guests coming up starting at 7:45. We've got Danny Kelly and Danny Heifetz leading things off. And at 8 p.m., we've got Mina. So should be a really good night overall. But I think we should kick things off with just talking ourselves a little bit about the Patriots draft. I know we did it a little bit on your podcast, cross-promoted it to Pat's chat. We didn't talk at all about day 3, though. And I thought day 3 was a really important day for the Patriots. It actually featured my favorite pick overall on day 3, and that was Braden Swinson. That was their first 5th round pick there. Braden Swinson, pass rusher out of LSU, seems like a pretty major steal. And I was able to get some intel on Braden Swinson, why he might have fallen actually in the last few days as well. Just teams around the league thought that there was maybe some very, very minor character stuff with him, maybe lacked a little bit of maturity. I think that also another factor that played into him falling a little bit was just the fact that it took him 5 years to really finally produce. Took him 2 schools, 5 years, really broke out in a big way at LSU. So, maybe there might be some similar growing pains in the NFL, but there's certainly high hopes for Braden Swinson with the Patriots. So that was probably actually my favorite overall pick in the draft for the Patriots. What was your favorite pick?
Well, I just love that you are the reporter's reporter because you offer an opinion of this was my favorite pick, but then let me give you real intel that bashes the pick. Like poo-poo is the guy that you were trying to prop up.
No, I mean, he had to fall to the 5th round somehow, otherwise
totally.
He probably should have been like a 2nd, 3rd round pick.
Yeah, and there were some public statements that you could read into from the LSU coaches, even from him, that like, okay, they're probably not, spending extra time together outside of the facility. Like, let's put it that way. But look, It's the 5th round. guys who fall there, you know what you're taking. Hell, Shedeur Sanders is an adjacent case to this when you talk about coachability or things that are maybe off the field impacting your draft stock as a football player. Swinson was tied for fourth in the SEC in pressures, 59. I'll say that again, 59 pressures in the SEC.
Sixth overall in the FBS last year.
Yes, you're great. You're a great player. So what I like about it is not only just the production, it took him 5 years, whatever. Like you played at Oregon and LSU and were often the best defender in the field. That works. What I like about it is he's got a role immediately, right? As part of this rotation that I think is going to be new to a lot of Patriots fans, where they're going to be just waves of bodies on that defensive line. And that's what's going to make it go as much as a Milt Williams or Christian Barmore. They're going to get a breather. He can do that. Really good speed to power guy on the edge. Wasn't my favorite pick. That was Kyle Williams. But, I mean, they crushed day 2 and rolled it over into day 3, even with the long snapper pick towards the end. So, yes, very, very good draft.
Yeah, Kyle Williams also. Let's talk about him a little bit. I'm sure we'll talk about him quite a bit tonight. But seems like the Patriots feel like he can move all over the field. As long as, he can handle the offense and handle all those different roles, which they'll figure out once he gets inside the building. But, I mean, I think that they believe that he's a guy with high character, a little bit undersized, obviously, but he's got everything else. He's on the shorter side. He's on the smaller side, smaller hands, but I know you've made a big deal out of this, can get open against man coverage. He's a big play threat. I liked his ability to kind of sit down in zone and find space in the middle of the defense that way. So seems like who knows? He's got to break a curse though to be a contributor. And I don't want to overstate that, but it does feel like this could be the one to do it, but we felt that way about Jalen Polk last year also. And it's just so many of these second, third round receivers, you can even throw first round in there with N'Keal Harry, but it's a different regime, a lot of different scouts in the building now than they had when they were drafting, Chad Jackson and Taylor Price and all of these guys. So you got to hope that this one flips it for them.
Yeah, and I think it's a new era too, right? Not only just Mike Vrabel as the head coach, Josh McDaniels is still the offensive coordinator, but that man went through a scarring experience in Las Vegas and then had a year and a half to sit with that and go, what did I do wrong? What do I need to do right next time? And around him are not a bunch of guys who came up in the same system, which when you go back to, 2021, even the end of the Brady years, like Mohamed Sanu, yes, he got hurt, but there was an issue where the offense collapsed under the weight of its own complexity. It just kept building out and out and out. And that's the whole idea, is you just have answers for everything, which does not lend itself towards an easy road for rookies. So I think this version of Josh McDaniels in this new era of the Patriots, surrounded by Thomas Brown and Todd Downing, guys who can just translate the same concepts and say, here's how we installed it, and the guy's got it right away, is going to be really helpful. Now, the thing you don't have to teach Kyle Williams, whatever the concept is, great release package, the man-to-man stuff I love, and the 4.4 speed. He's not some huge 10 out of 10 relative athletic score type of prospect, but the man knows how to get open and catch the football, and especially take the top off of defenses. So if you're building a receiver in the third round to take for the Patriots, he checks all of those boxes.
Oh, let's show some super chats here real quick. We've got Massachusetts football guy. A- draft grade. Let's go Pats. And then another one real quick we got here. McCourty Barrows, appreciate all the work you guys do. Make the offseason less boring. Just want to give to a good cause. Best wishes. Once again, the ways to donate. Super chats. And then also at princesshalleforever.com. So lots of ways to donate. I've got a take though, before we get some guests on here.
Yeah.
I think this is on paper the strongest Patriots draft in my time covering the team. On paper, post-draft.
So say when you started, though. Because
I started, I'll get into that. Okay. So the first year I really kind of covered the draft for the Patriots was 2011. So in 2011, they had Shane Vereen, they had Stephen Ridley. I think Razai Dowling might have been in there, Nate Solder. So after that draft, you're talking about all right, well, Razai Dowling's got some injury issues. Why'd you take Ryan Mallett in the third round? 2 running backs back-to-back seems a little bit odd. 2012 was really strong with Chandler Jones and Dante Hightower. But the rest of that class, you had some question marks in. So I just feel like on paper, this is the highest I remember anyone being on a Patriots draft. And obviously there could be some misses in here, and it probably there's a good chance you don't wind up getting a Chandler Jones and Dante Hightower out of this draft. But just purely based on post-draft, this is the best that I have ever felt in my time covering the team about a Patriots draft. Obviously, you've been covering the team a little bit less time, but what about you? How is this compared to, like, let's say 2021 or some of the other drafts they've had through the years of you covering the team?
Yeah, so I started in 18, and that was after the draft. So my first full draft was 2019, which was famous for being 3.5 years later, completely empty. All of those players got cut. The last one to hang on was Giardi Kajust, who was injured. Maybe Damian Harris there. But look, it is exceptionally strong. I know there's the natural pushback of like, oh my God, how can you guys grade the draft immediately after it happens? Like, look, yes, it's easy just to wait and see. The Patriots don't have the luxury of waiting and seeing. These guys need to play right away. So what you do is you grade it on the information you have right now, their college tape, the measurables, the likelihood that players that profile like them have historically panned out. Combine that with the team needs and then where you got them on the board. Yeah, I'm with you. This is an easy yes for me as far as the best Patriots draft class that we've seen immediately after it's assembled. And again, when you look at guys that they got, from Kyle Williams on down to Braden Swinson, these are all higher on the consensus board, which is much more predictive than any individual media members board because it takes all of the collection, Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler, all the experts, Mike Renner, Steve Palazzolo, everybody, and says this is the collective wisdom. And it's often right. So they got guys way lower in the draft than they were expected to go based on that board. The key is, of course, going to be Will Campbell, right? Like if he doesn't play left tackle, I think it's going to be a much harder case for the next 5, 6, 7, 10, 8 years to do it. But I've come around a little bit more than I expected of Will Campbell. It's not just because he took him. It's because of things that we've learned in the last few weeks and then talking to people like you who are sold already.
Absolutely. And obviously, so this was a year before I started covering the team, but 2010 was obviously a very strong draft as well. We're actually going to have on their Patriots top pick, Devin McCourty. We're going to have his brother, Jason McCourty, part of this live stream. But even that, after that draft, obviously they went up with Devin McCourty and Rob Gronkowski, really a game-changing draft. They got Brandon Spikes later on. People were not fully sold on Devin McCourty at the time. Like people thought, we brought this up on our last chat, our last live stream with him. Like people wanted Kyle Wilson at that pick. They were like, why are they taking this guy from Rutgers who was supposed to be a second-round pick late in the first round?
Yeah.
Wound up working out extremely well. Future Patriots Hall of Famer there. But like, that's what I'm talking about, where even on some of their stronger drafts, it hasn't always appeared that way right away. Before we get a couple of our guests on, we will, let's take a super chat real quick. We have got Jeff. He says, with the concern of our kicker draft pick in cold weather, why don't the Patriots send him somewhere cold to train for a week? Why don't more teams do this together 1 to 2 weeks a year during summer to Argentina or Chile? I mean, it's not a bad, I guess it's not a bad idea. Send him off to Alaska or something. Maybe like, I don't even know. Yeah. Argentina or Chile. Yes, that would work out since that's Southern Hemisphere.
Well, he's from Venezuela. So I think that probably is at the top of his big board of places to go over the summer. I will just
probably not cold enough there though, I would guess.
This is the second $49.99 super chat that we got, which is a rousing start. Like you guys have set the bar exceptionally high. Thank you for donating to the cause. Again, your money cannot go to a better place than cancer research in Hallie's memory. B, just give a cent more. Because like
I think it's something within the super chat. So this will count as 5 raffle tickets.
Right. So that's the point is we keep reminding you that when you donate $10, you get your question answered or anything more. And then every $10 gives you another raffle ticket towards this football. Which is signed in addition to Kayshon Boutte and Jelani Tavai, Kendrick Bourne, other starters on the team. You'll get it, you'll see it, and we'll raffle this off after the show. So thank you very much, B Venezuela. See if he's going to go. Someone's got to document it, don't they? Do you think we have the budget at the Herald to send me maybe for this week-long camp that was just invented by our good guy Jeff?
I think that's a great idea. And so obviously we didn't get into this fully, but this is a cause very close to my heart. I was nominated for LLS Visionaries of the Year. My daughter Hallie died of AML, acute myeloid leukemia, in January of 2024. And all of this money goes towards cancer research. We don't want any family to have to deal with what we dealt with. And during Hallie's last days and last weeks and last months, the hope that we had was for new cancer treatments. And that's where this money goes as well, to try to develop new cancer treatments for children, for adults. So it's obviously, like I said, a cause very close to my heart. Before we pull in our guests, I did actually want to thank a sponsor, and that's 5 Horizons. So 5 Horizons is proud to sponsor today's event and extends heartfelt thanks to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society for creating this incredible opportunity to fight cancer and honor my beautiful daughter, Hallie. 5 Horizons believes that great marketing starts with understanding, As a digital-first agency, Five Horizons helps brands grow through thoughtful strategy, compelling, creative, and data-driven results. From SEO and social media to website design, the team works alongside you. No retainers, no pressure, just true partnership. Five Horizons would love to connect and explore how they can help support your vision. Find them at fivehorizons.agency. So thanks again to Five Horizons for sponsoring this event and for all the help that they've done for us, for our campaign, for LLS. So we are now going to bring in our first two guests here, two of our favorites, two of our good friends. We've got Danny Heifetz and Danny Kelly from the Ringer Fantasy Show. Danny's, how are you guys doing?
Doing excellent.
I'm great. I'm thrilled.
All right, I love to hear it. So what'd you guys? Let's start off with Danny. That was a joke, you guys. Danny.
Yeah. He can go age before beauty. He can start.
All right.
Oh, great.
Danny Kelly.
Yeah.
One of my good friends in this media landscape. What did you think of the Patriots draft overall?
Look, I'm not just pandering. It was actually my highest graded class of every team.
There we go.
All right.
I really liked what you guys did from start to finish. Basically, it was, you got several starters. I think you had 6 players that were in my top 100, which was more than any other team. Every time I looked up, it felt like you guys were taking a player that I liked. So, just overall, I thought you guys, and by you guys, I mean the Patriots. You're not on the team.
We would have taken 7 guys in the top 100, obviously. That is the main difference here. Not our employer,
right.
Just how we would have drafted based on your board.
Yeah. I'd like to think our Herald previews really, was a blueprint for the Patriots.
For
strategy.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like, Trayvon Henderson, one of my favorite players in this draft. Kyle Williams has been, a big riser over the last month or two. Jared Wilson, I was hoping the Seahawks would take him. I'm a Seahawks fan. So yeah, every time I looked up, like I said, it seemed like you guys were taking a player I liked.
Danny Heifetz, what do you think of the class?
I hate the Patriots. I hate your success, and I thought you guys did awesome. So I'm truly not pandering at all. I am genuinely upset because I think the Patriots did fantastic, and it feels like a rebirth of sorts. And I kind of like when the Phoenix was ashes, but this feels like a regrowth.
What Danny Heifetz was the most interesting thing? Like, you could take this favorite pick, least favorite pick, or just a fit, a timeline, a trade, something they didn't do. Like, the most interesting thing about what happened adjacent to the Patriots.
I think the most interesting thing was just seeing how much a vision worked. There's just the continued string of competence and a vision of just the stacking together. I'm like, oh my God, Kyle Williams, the first Patriots receiver that can separate post-COVID. And then the left tackle gets up and is like, I'll die for Drake May. And then Travion Henderson is your fastest player since Randy Moss. That's good. No offense to Tyquan Thornton. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to work. And the slow realization that this is going to work was interesting is the wrong word. Horrifying, really.
We got a comment from our friend Benjamin Solak. Tell Heifetz to put on the hoodie and tie, please.
I did. Yeah, Schefter and I wore the same stuff in the first round. It was such a weird coincidence. Yeah.
Was it stitched together? I didn't know that was a thing until we were talking about this on the radio last week. Was he wearing the stitched together hoodie with the jacket?
So Schefter, he wore a blazer of some sort with a suit and tie. Yeah. But between the jacket and the suit and tie was a blue hoodie, a classic blue light thin hoodie thing, between, as if he was the only one cold on the set. It was, I don't know why. And then randomly I did that too. It's, what are the odds?
What are the odds? Danny Kelly, did you have a least favorite pick from the Patriots class? You might have to go a little bit far down the line, but there were some head scratchers down at the end, I'd have to say.
How about we just combine the fact they took a kicker and a long snapper? Again, I thought we were past this. I thought that we were done with this. We have to deal with this every year. I'm going to be honest. I didn't scout. I didn't use kickers and long snappers in my draft guide. So they're probably very great people, great football players. But it just it felt like the legacy of Bill Belichick lived on in this draft. They had to add in the kicker and the long snapper at the end there.
It is funny because I'm so dulled by Bill Belichick drafts where he drafted a kicker in the 4th round once. He drafted Joe Cardona in the 5th round. He drafted Jake Ingram, another long snapper, in the 6th round. So when they took a long snapper at 251, I was like, hey, this is pretty normal. This is and then for everyone else, they were like, what
great
the
value.
hell?
Imagine being Kobe Minor, the guy who was Mr. Irrelevant to them, being looking at the board and being wait, they were looking at long snapper and me, and they chose long snapper. That's kind of tough.
the funniest quote, and it was unintentional. And like, I'm not saying this to like trash Elliot Wolf by any means, but the funniest quote in like Patriots draft press conferences was Elliot Wolf being like, "Yeah, we thought he was the best long snapper on the board. I would hope so. Since you drafted the guy in the 7th round, I hope you weren't picking off the 5th long snapper on your board there."
Magic Johnson's quote.
I will say, to beat a dead horse, drafting kickers is stupid. Like in any round, there's literally, like, they've done studies on this. There's no difference in quality between drafted kickers and undrafted kickers. Drafted kickers never do well for their team, almost never. Like, they always catch on with the 2nd or 3rd team and are good then. Also, some of the best kickers in the NFL came from like the USFL and the XFL, like Brandon Aubrey and Jake Bates. Like, they're kickers, they grow on trees. I don't really understand.
They grow in Europe.
So
all the soccer players.
You mentioned the 5th ranked long snapper because that's exactly where Ashby was on Dane Brugler's board. Which I don't know what Dane's doing that none of us else are, but among those things is studying long snappers and ranking them. I didn't mind the kicker pick, to be honest, just because it felt like there was a big gap per people that knew more than I did between Andres Borgalis, who missed just 1 field goal last year and can kick into the 60s, and everybody else. So if you're a team that's like been through, hey, we drafted the guy who was a sneaky white supremacist, and by sneaky I mean he had a tattoo that kind of told you in 2020, and then Chad Ryland, whose mechanically changed immediately, and then when he got back to his old mechanics was good in Arizona. Like, just take the guy, make sure he's normal, and then put him on the field and let him do his thing. Like, they need that now because I don't, call me crazy. Are they in the playoff conversation? Are they encroaching now? This goes to either of you.
I think you could include them as like a potential contender for sure. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the theme that I really recognized, especially early on, was I think their first 4 picks were players that are going to immediately help Drake May, which I think is just so smart. That's exactly what they should be doing. They spent a lot of money in free agency on the defense. They basically hedged on that side of the ball so they can really focus on building around Drake May for the long term. I don't know if it's going to like all come together in year 1 for them, but I think, obviously grabbing Campbell in the 1st round, he's going to protect Drake May. Grabbing Henderson in the 2nd round, he's going to protect Drake May. Grabbing Williams in the 3rd round, hopefully he'll get open for Drake May and therefore protect him. Get him a guy that he could get the ball out quickly. Just because, it just seems like last year, every time I looked up watching the Patriots, it was just Drake May getting clobbered or scrambling or whatever, so this way they can kind of, run their offense a little more smoothly. And then Jared Wilson, like I said, was a guy that I kind of had my eye on. He was like one of the best centers in this class. It was not a very deep center class, but he's got a ton of upside, athletic. I think he needs a little more experience probably, but the sky's the limit with that guy just because of the way he can move. And, so overall, just they came out with the exact right idea: protect the franchise quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, with Jared Wilson, it seems like best positions at center. Elliot Wolf did say potentially they could have him play some guard. I don't love that idea. I think I prefer to have him just continue snapping the ball. But Danny Heifetz, this could go for the Patriots. This could go for the entire league. What was the dumbest thing you saw this weekend?
The dumbest thing? Oh, dude, one of these teams took a kicker and a long snapper. that was crazy. No, I think the dumbest thing it was actually inaction. I think there were a lot of things that got made fun of, like the Falcons trading back. I think my least favorite thing a team did is actually the Vikings draft. I don't like the Vikings draft, and it goes back to last year with Dallas Turner. The Vikings give up a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th to move up and grab Dallas Turner, and they, in exchange for that, they missed Jared Verse to the Rams, Chop Robinson to the Dolphins. One of those players or Dallas Turner falls to them. So the Vikings enter this draft without many picks. They take Donovan Jackson like 24th. He's a guard at Ohio State. Yeah. It seems like inoffensive, right? The next pick is the Texans collecting 2/3 to move back like 8 spots to the Giants or Jackson Dart. The pick after that is the Rams getting next year's first from Atlanta to move back 20 spots. And I don't think a lot of people came out of this like, what are the Vikings doing? But I'm like, what are the Vikings doing? Why you're giving up a 3rd, 4th, 5th to get the 3rd best edge rusher in that 8-pick span, and then you're not taking one of those 2 trades? I think we always say Vikings analytically oriented. I actually think it's those 2 drafts I think were very poorly run outside of getting JJ McCarthy.
I think that's fair to say. We do have a super chat question, long-term question here. Do you think there's a better chance of 3+ players in this class will be able to contribute this season, or one of the receivers from last year being able to develop and play a role under the new staff? That would be Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. I don't mean to be negative. I think I might go with like 3 players from this year's class.
Well, the kicker and long snapper, that's 2.
Those guys, yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. If Joe Cardona's out of the picture, then you got 2 right there. Then you only need 1 more. I mean, I actually still think that Jalen Polk and Javon Baker could do something. But just the fact that they drafted Kyle Williams in the 3rd round, I think tells you a little bit what they think of Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. Because if they had full confidence that one of those guys or both were going to be contributors this year, I don't think they take a wide receiver in the 3rd round. But the fact that they viewed that position just like Patriots fans do and a lot of like the media and outside media do tells me that they're like, all right, we'll see what we can get out of these guys, but there's really no guarantee. Thought.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
So the long snapper pick, which I keep making fun of, but is Joe Cardona retiring or what?
We have no indication of that. He
No.
also signed the football, which the more I list player names off, just becomes more and more enticing and exciting as we try to raffle this off. But look, he's expensive. He's getting older.
Yeah.
He's now a holdover twice. Belichick to Mayo, Mayo to Vrabel, and it's not like the idea was to get out all of the guys the old regime loved, but there's enough of a pattern here that like there are no sacred cows here, and certainly not the long snapper, who's the only one in the locker room, by the way, left with the Super Bowl ring. So
that's why I'm asking. I think it's really fitting that if Joe Cardona's gone, he's the last guy who even played. I believe Joe Cardona's the last player that had any overlap with Tom Brady either.
Yeah.
And so I think that the idea that if he didn't make this team, what a clean beginning to the Vrabel era, which is like, I mean, I don't have to tell you guys the idea that he's following Mayo instead of Belichick is so much better to be the guy after the guy instead of the guy after the guy. And there's something so clean about the break that would not have been clean in the past, but that there's no one left from Brady. The coaches are the ones who remember Brady. It's like Vrabel and Josh McDaniel. The players have no memory of the guy. And I don't know. I think there's an interesting dynamic to that to me.
It does make it interesting that it does feel like, especially when they released David Andrews, that they were like, let's try to get everyone out of the building that was with Bill, has won Super Bowls. This is a clean slate. And like with Cardona, he was the highest paid long snapper at one point in the NFL. He's still on that contract. And I know that from people in the building, he actually had a pretty bad season in 2023. Like there's a lot of like missed snaps. And I'm like, we're not studying long snappers by any means, but like when the guy's like the highest paid in the NFL, you want him to be automatic. He improved quite a bit last season. He actually forced a fumble that led the Patriots to win in week 1 against the Bengals.
Oh, hell
so
yeah.
like outside of even long snapping, he was pretty decent, but
Or you could argue he screwed up the entire season by winning that game.
I'm not
that
gonna
might be the dumbest thing from last year. Yeah.
It's the worst play of the year.
Yeah. So, Andrew, we've got, you can play a little game with the Dannies before they get out of here.
Oh no.
Ross wants you to play 2 truths and a lie.
Oh boy. So this is a radio bit.
Right on
I
the
have
spot.
Two fake Patriot stats and a lie. I have
Oh yeah.
Doug, buy me some time here. Look, we had a couple more questions. What's aside from the long snapper talk, which we've now done for I think half of the segment.
That's my
Was there any?
That's what I was really prepping for, actually. Yeah.
I was looking at a tight end, maybe, guys. And Doug and I have debated like the running back positional value thing with Travion Henderson, who I loved as a prospect, but just personally wouldn't have done there. Was there any nitpick you had for this class that everyone loves?
I mean, honestly, just like it's not a nitpick for the class. It's just like, it's such a bummer, obviously, that you're picking at 4 and not 3. I know that's probably just been talked about ad nauseum in New England by this point, but I think it's just a bummer that you didn't have a chance to get one of the generational players. But I overall, again, it was like my favorite class. I think this whole draft, this is not answering your question, but like when I was doing my grades, I was basically just like, the more I like wrote them up, I was like, I just didn't really love this draft class overall. Right. It was just, kind of a really top heavy. There's a couple really good blue chip players. And then the rest of it was like, oh yeah, I could see this guy being a good starter. I could see this guy being a good contributor or whatever. And so when you ask that question, I'm like, well, it's just kind of a bummer that they fell to 4. That's the main nitpick. But otherwise you get starters at like, I think all the first 4 or 5 picks are going to be potentially long-term starters for you guys. Was there any indication? I know that I didn't listen to all the Vrabel pressers, but they're saying Campbell's going to get a shot at left tackle, right?
Yeah, it seems like they're all in on him being a left tackle.
Yeah.
Did anyone else offer to die for Drake May? He gets to play left. That's over. I will say to your earlier question that I also didn't answer, Andrew, was the playoffs. I think the short answer is if they're in the playoff conversation, Vrabel alone makes them in the like the coaching alone, I think puts them directly in competition with the Jets in the Dolphins for a wild card. And like, obviously probably not, but I think that there is a Washington-esque, a Texans 2 years ago-esque ability, because I think that you can never properly rate what it's like to be one of the 5 or 6 best coach teams in the NFL. So I'll never say never to that.
There we go. Andrew, have you got your 2 truths and a lie, or do I have to buy you more time?
I'm going through old ones in my notes, and I have give me one more minute, and then we'll get.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I have fake Patriot stats and real ones. Can I give you a stat? Can I say something and you guys guess if it's true or not?
Sure.
Oh, turn it around on him. Go for it.
The Brady Belichick Patriots won the AFC East, or I guess rather say, the Brady Belichick Patriots prevented other teams from winning the AFC East more frequently than condoms prevent pregnancies.
I'm ready now, and I can't follow that. So I don't know. I don't know what to do next.
That's true. It's bad, yeah.
I think I'm going to say that's a lie.
It's true.
Condoms
are 89% effective.
Let's see if we can get 5 people on the stage real quick. Can we? No.
I have the 2 truths and a lie here.
There we go. We got 5 people. Mina Kimes, welcome.
Hey, what's up, guys? I entered at quite a time.
You really did. Andrew's about to do 2 truths and a lie, so you can play along with this, and then we'll get the Dannies out of here.
All right, really quickly. Number 1, Javon Baker had the same number of catches as the Patriots starting left tackle last year. Drake May had the longest scramble by a white quarterback of the last 5 years.
Okay.
Bill Belichick and Jordan actually met on an airplane.
Oh.
I mean, I think I know the lie.
I'm worried to guess what I think is the lie.
We really put her in a bad spot.
Yeah,
we're not talking about that. We're not talking about that.
Yeah, and Andrew can be the one.
Can I say? I'll just say my answer is the first 2 are true.
Yes, I think that's fair.
Well put, Danny.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
How many did Javon Baker have? 0 or 1?
He had 1.
1.
And so did Vidarian Lowe.
So number 1 was right. Joe Burrow had a longer scramble than Drake May last year. So number 2 was the lie. And I will just continue to say until proven otherwise. Bill and Jordan did beat on an airplane. Okay, we won't talk about it, but that's the story.
Didn't Drake May have the highest EPA per carry of any quarterback, any race? I feel like on a down-to-down basis, his rushing numbers were off the charts.
They were. There was
a whole offense. Yeah. Joe Burrow went for 49 yards, I think, sometime in September. And that held up against Drake. So there you go.
And I think Drake might have some more design carries this year too. If
yes,
Josh McDaniels runs a similar offense, the one that he ran with Cam Newton. So that would be good as well. But Danny and Danny, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to see you guys.
Yep,
you can say how classic it is. We went through.
See you, Mina.
Thank you.
All right, Mina, thank you so much for joining us. Sorry to throw you on there with the Dannies right away, but first of all, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm back in LA from Green Bay. I was in Green Bay all week. I gotta say, I did love Green Bay, and I'm not lying. I had a good time. Last day was a little bit cold and rainy, but it was a great city to have the draft.
Had you ever been to Green Bay before?
Yeah, a couple times. So it was not my first. It was my first time this time of year. Previously, I'd been at the beginning of the football season, which is a great time to go, by the way. Great time.
So what did you think of the Patriots draft overall?
Well, I am not pandering here. I just did an episode of Draft Winners, and they were my first winner. So, spoiler alert, if you're watching this and you're a Pats fan, go subscribe to the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny. Go check it out. We're a very Drake May positive space, but also very positive on the draft. I really liked it. Really liked a lot of the players. I like the value they got them for. I love the focus on helping May, to be honest, obviously, which was a concern of mine coming out of free agency. I was just I was worried about the Pats going into the draft. The metaphor I've used on my podcast is shopping hungry at the grocery store. With you just should never go to the grocery store when you're hungry because you walk out with a cake. And I was worried that would lead them to overpay an offense. And while some people could argue Will Campbell at 4, maybe we'll see, right? That might be a little bit high for him. I still think that they came away with some pretty good offensive contributors.
So Mina, we spent the last 4 months talking about Will Campbell and the difference in an inch and a quarter. And I don't know where you stand on this. So just as far as his long-term viability as a left tackle, where did you end there with the draft as whether he can do it or not?
I think he can. I've been a fan of his for a while, going back to, I'm not going to be like the Will Campbell hipster, but I will say I became very impressed with him watching Jay Daniels, right? So that was like my first, like, oh, okay, this dude, like I generally was very impressed with Jay Daniels' protection at LSU. Got some intel on his game from Andrew Whitworth, who knows him very well, of course, and, has the LSU connection there too. And, I thought the 2024 tape was a little bit up and down at times, but I saw a lot of the same traits that I liked about him for the first time I watched him. I thought he looked smooth. I thought you didn't see a lot of panic in his game. I think he's a plus athlete as well. I think he's equally proficient in both the run and the pass game. Didn't really see like a glaring weakness. The length, does show up a little bit on, and we'll see. I know that there's some debate about whether or not he might have to go inside at some point. But I think for New England, just in terms of like where they were picking, even if he isn't the long-term left tackle, I think he's still a good draft pick for them.
Definitely. Yeah. It's funny how the discourse changed on Will Campbell over the last year, because like if you had told Patriots fans last year after they drafted Drake May, like, hey, you can get Drake May and guess what? You'll also get Will Campbell. I think they would have been ultimately extremely thrilled. Yeah. And I do think that the opinions, even within Patriots fans, have changed on Will Campbell over the last few days, where like when they first took him, they were like, I don't know, like it's a safe pick, whatever. And then immediately after the draft, I gave that pick a B on Twitter, and I had people like threatening me over it. They were so excited about the pick all of a sudden. So like the discourse has changed once again, but overall, I do think it was a smart pick. I don't think they could have made a better pick there. I don't think there was another obvious answer. We do have some super chats to get to here real quick. And once again, if you want to send in a super chat, it all goes to my LLS fundraiser, Visionaries of the Year campaign. We have a question on the Joe Milton trade, which is very dated, but so thoughts on the Milton trade. This is from Rick Whippy. Benefits of moving him for what seemed like not a lot. Bonus question, is Mina over Celebrity Jeopardy? So, Mina, first of all, what'd you think of the Joe Milton trade, I guess? Yeah, ultimately they wound up trading the pick that they got for him. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have every time if he stayed, every time you looked at him, you just see Travis Hunter. So you got to get that guy out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, I was never like a Joe Milton person. Like I never, he had some real believers. So I don't think it's like this major loss. I don't see him as a starter in the NFL. I know that some people are kind of entranced by the arm and all of that. I just didn't see it. So I don't think it's a huge deal. I actually do not know off the top of my head who Drake May's backup is right now. You guys will have to tell me.
Joshua Dobbs.
Oh, it's Dobbs. Great.
Yep.
Like that's totally fine. That's honestly like better than a lot of teams around the NFL. But yeah, I didn't think I guess it now, you're seeing how desperate teams are. You're seeing, I mean, like the Seahawks just moved Sam Howell for nothing as well. Right. So I just feel like it's really hard to get that much of a return. And I'm not over Celebrity Jeopardy. Every now and then I just get haunted by my own cowardice.
Oh no. So sorry to hear that. Sorry that Rick brought up a sore subject as well.
It's okay, Rick with you.
Let's throw in another super chat here and split this into two. So Mina, when you look at the whole draft, I think you just mentioned him, but the prospect with the high ceiling. And then for the Patriots specifically in their class, which prospect do you see as the highest ceiling? This comes from Kyle Marsden.
Yeah. Okay. Well, highest ceiling is Travis Hunter. But sorry, Patriots fans to rub that in. Highest ceiling, the Patriots draft, though, is really fun. Thinking through Henderson, Williams, Wilson. Wilson's really good. Swinson. I'd probably say I think Henderson has the ceiling to be like a top 5 to 10 running back in the NFL. I really believe that. So much of running backs hitting their ceiling is, of course, though, based on situation. It'll be contingent upon whether or not the offensive line takes a step forward. But, he, I think, has all of the guys that they drafted, probably when I think of ceiling, I think of like, can they be in the top 5 at the position? And I do think he can do that.
I'm sure Andrew loved that you brought up the offensive line. We've had like multiple, like way too long debates about whether the Patriots could take a running back with the state of their offensive line. And Andrew is very firmly in. I think Andrew wanted them to wait until like undrafted period to add a running back just until the offensive line was fixed. But I was fine I would have been fine with Genty at 4, and I was also fine with Henderson at 38. So
I was happy like late day 2, early day 3. Like Basil Tootin, Danny Kelly's already gone. We bonded over him over several highlights and texts. And so like, look, I was just like, wait a little bit longer. But look, like if you told me they would get Kyle Williams and Jared Wilson later that night, I would have said, sure, order doesn't matter. We just didn't know it at the time.
We've got another one here. I'm not going to say which Washington state. I'm going to say which state of Washington receiver on our team does me and Connor's like better. Jalen Polk from UW or Kyle Williams from Wazoo.
Polk's such an L for me. I thought he would be so much better as a pro. I still don't get it. And I'm not giving up, right?
No.
There's obviously a lot of change in the regime and all of that, but like it was really disappointing. And it's just not who he was in college at all. So, yeah, I mean, at this point, it's pretty hard to pick him over anyone. Williams, to kind of focus on the good here, was a player I really wanted for Seattle. Honestly, it's just a team that I root for. I think there really wasn't anyone like him at that point in the draft, which is why I was so thrilled for New England to get him. Just an elite separator. He comes to the roster and immediately fills the need of giving you someone who can win downfield, which was kind of the missing piece and why I love the pick so much. But he can separate like underneath. He's a really good route runner. The ding on him, the reason why he's available is really just like size. But I feel like he fits in perfectly. He's exactly what this offense needed. And suddenly, like you're looking in the room and it feels a lot more complete, like it's kind of coming together.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, I know a lot of Patriots fans like Jalen Knoll around that pick as well, but just feels like Williams is a more complete receiver and something more that the Patriots currently need, where like in the slot, I know that you don't want to like not draft a player like they did with Ladd McConkey last year because you have Damari Douglas in the building, but like Damari Douglas can play the slot. There's some people within the building who think that Jalen Polk is actually a better fit in the slot. So he's another guy who could get some inside snaps this season. Kendrick Bourne can play in the slot. Stephon Diggs can play in the slot. So even though I like Jalen Knoll, it felt a little bit redundant if they were going to take him. Yeah. Whereas Kyle Williams did play a lot more outside at Washington State. Like you're saying, he can separate, he can get open versus man. So it did feel like the more complete player and the better fit for the Patriots offense when they took him there.
Yeah. Very good. Zooming out real quick, Mina, we just asked this to the Dannies. Your divisional previews aren't going to be for a while in the pod. Is the playoffs going to be part of that conversation, though, when you do have it July and August?
For New England, you mean?
Yeah.
Boy.
In the mix. We'll put it in the mix.
Yeah, I think they're going to take a big leap forward. They'll probably be like, if I put together a list of teams I expect to improve the most, I would put New England up there. I mean, real defensive overhaul, bringing in a mixture of, expensive players, obviously. And also, I actually like the defensive players they drafted too. I mean, not that they'll be contributors right away, but nice mix of young youth and veteran depth. And I think like the defense last year, obviously there were injuries, get Barmore back, Vrabel's in the building. I just really like, I think that side of the ball, you're going to be a big bounce back. For the offense, I think it's just going to come down to whether or not the offensive line can be competent. I think so, but it is asking a lot of a rookie and Will Campbell. They didn't really make the sorts of improvement. I mean, it was Moses, right? Who they added at right tackle.
Moses. Yep.
He's at least gives you competent tackle play on a bookend. And look, I mean, nothing can be worse than what we watched last year. But I think if the offensive line is average, then they could be in the mix. Absolutely.
Definitely. Was there? We'll get you out of here in a minute here, but is there one more move that you could foresee the Patriots making, whether that's a trade, like someone left out there in free agency, anything else looking forward that you think they could do to maybe push them over that edge into a potential playoff spot? I know there's not a lot of those guys still out there, but is there anything that you could see out there?
Thinking of less about free agents and more about any trade opportunities, because New England is an interesting spot in that you guys are, I know this well, obviously they weren't able to get some free agents and yet they have all this money and they spent some of it. But I think they're the kind of team where like, if it's a player like, I don't know, a Trey Hendrickson, for example, I don't think necessarily that would be what Cincinnati would do, but a team that doesn't want to pay a guy, New England would be a great, like a recipient of a trade. George Pickens is someone who comes to mind. That would be, it's kind of hard for me to imagine Mike Vrabel signing off on that one. So I guess, I have to think about it. Ramsey's out there too. as a trade guy, Tyreek Hill. You guys would know better than I don't really have a feel for how aggressive this front office is, that kind of thing. Because when we start talking about veteran switching teams, it really becomes about sort of the willingness of the front office, and whether or not they're comfortable, I suppose, with the offensive makeup as it is. I would love them to add more offensive lines, truly still, but it might be hard to find a trade partner.
Yeah, I think you're probably a year away from being a year away is the best way to put it. And so they're coalescing a lot of young talent. Coaches are coming together. Like Josh McDaniels' offense will not be the last that we saw, so it might be tough. I would throw this out there. Holdouts this summer. Like whomever doesn't want to go anywhere. New England's a little bit more attractive. Drake May's established. He's got enough highlights that if you're scrolling through your reels, you're going to see him. If you were Brandon Ayuk a year ago, maybe you change your mind. They were in on Ayuk. That was my only thought.
Well, thanks so much, Mina, for joining us. We will get you out of here. But this means a lot to me. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. Go check it out. A+, one of my favorite drafts.
Thanks, Mina.
Thank you. Now we will bring on our friend Mike Giardi. Mike, how you doing?
Very good. Very good. Good to catch the back end of that interview, and I'm excited to be here with you, obviously, for a very, very important cause. And I just love how you continue to put this front and center, Doug. So I think it's awesome. Andrew, too, your help and CLNS and everybody. It's great.
Definitely. Yeah. This is a CLNS production. So thank you so much to CLNS. Since you said that, you guys can donate at princesshallyforever.com. You can also send in a super chat. Raffle tickets for a football signed by Kendrick Bourne and many of his Patriots teammates are $10. So if you send in a $10 super chat, you get a raffle ticket. If you send in a donation with the comment KB Ball, you get a raffle ticket. And if you send in $50 and you get 5 raffle tickets. You understand how it works all from there on. But Mike, let's kick things off here with your opinion overall on the Patriots draft before we get into some of these super chat questions that we've got.
I wrote today in Boston Sports Journal. It was just sort of like, it made sense. And it's the first time in a long time where it just made sense. I mean, I could have done without the long snapper at the end of the draft. I mean, I just nothing against him personally. Just I don't think you should draft the long snapper, but whatever, that's fine. I just think you go, even for all the debates that we've had about Will Campbell, they needed offensive line help. They decided that was the best guy to fill the job at left tackle. Boom, he's there. And then on and on it goes, where I guess maybe you could look at the Travion Henderson thing and say, like, is that a little rich for a running back, especially considering this class? But I would say about him, and I've sort of been beating this drum for a while, and it feels like people have started to like, oh, he's great in pass protection. Like, one of the hardest things for these guys to do, ask James White, ask Shane Vereen, the guys that had to sort of matriculate, go through the process, redshirt a year, and then, okay, this is how it needs to be done, and if this is what you want to do to get on the field. And he already seems to have that in his bag, understanding it, and the willingness to. Like, he's not as big. I've said this a bunch of times. Quinshon Judkins is a big dude. He can't pass pro to save his life. Travion Henderson, man, is not that big, and he's like, I know what I'm doing, and I'm willing to stick my nose in there, and he's successful at it. So that's a little thing. Like, you want him to be explosive. You want him to catch the ball coming out of the backfield, do all those things. But, like, he's not getting on the field if he doesn't do that either. And I think he's already got that in his bag. So you can kind of see why, okay, you know what? He's just the best guy we have on our board. Let's trust the board and go with him. So
I want to get the bigger picture stuff with you here in a second. But the way you bring up the blitz pickup, I think is really key, because I remember first Belichick glare I got training camp 2018. Sony Michel just been drafted. What's the hardest thing for a rookie running back to do coming into the NFL? Turns his head. Of course, you got the big pregnant pause and another pregnant pause. Pass protection. And then looked at me like I just like didn't have a credential on and had just like a Bill Sucks t-shirt on. But the reason I bring that up,
he was looking for Jordan over the side. That's why he turned.
Okay. We've already made sure. Josh, I brought this point up about McDaniels and how I think he will be more adaptable, and I think the teaching will be a little bit different with all the different coaches and the streamlining. Have you heard anything related to that? Do you believe it as well? Is this a different guy that's coming around now for stint number 3? Because that will not affect just the receivers, but it would affect Travion Henderson's ability to probably get on the field.
I think that was part of the agreement between he and Mike. Like, you've done it a certain way for a long time, and obviously you had great success when you were in New England. And then when you went out on your own, you struggled to find that success there. The league has evolved a little bit. The players that you're bringing in have evolved. We've talked about this quite a bit over the last 5-10 years, sort of the different kind of athlete you're getting, the NIL, just the whole, it's a different process now. And I think it's like, you can't bring the Tom Brady playbook to a second-year quarterback and a bunch of young players that we're trying to piece together here on offense and build something special. You have to almost think like you're just starting the process, like you were in 2001 or whatever, with Charlie Weiss, like that whole thing. You've got to build it up slowly. And then as Drake becomes more comfortable, as the guys around him become more comfortable, then maybe it gets a little wordier. Maybe you throw on a couple things. Maybe there's an extra option here or there. I think at this point, though, the best thing is just to sort of streamline it and allow the young players to play fast. And, we've heard that before in recent years. I don't think we heard it with the right people. I think we're hearing it now with the right people. And, look, we'll see what it looks like when they get on the field. But I think that makes a lot of sense.
We do have a super chat question here from Ken. I see a lot of players who have returned kickoffs and punts among picks in UDFA. And Mr. Irrelevant appears to be more of a nickel type. Can Marcus Jones beat the surprise cut or trading block? I'll start off here. I did a 53-man roster projection for today. Cornerback still is not a very deep position on this roster. And I don't think you can really necessarily afford to cut or trade Marcus Jones at this point, because even guys like Alex Austin and Isaiah Bolden, who had some moments at the end of last year, you can't necessarily count on them. I don't really see an obvious third cornerback on this roster behind Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis beyond Marcus Jones. I think that Kobe Minor, Alex Austin, Isaiah Bolden, Miles Battle, one of those guys would have to have a monster summer for me to be comfortable moving on from Marcus Jones at this point.
Andrew?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Marcus Jones was floated to us, and we heard, he's not really a fit for Vrabel's defense. And then you get Justin Hamilton, I think his name is the new corners coach, being like, I met with Marcus. That dude's much more physical than an average 5'8" person. Yeah. Mike, you can chime in on that. I'm not sure if that's accurate. But look, I think
5'9" and a quarter. At this point, I used to be 5'9" and 3/4. I've shaved it down to 5'9" and a quarter. I know what
those feet start getting flatter and you start losing some inches. I understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Age does it to you. Maybe you could lend your inches to Will Campbell. That would help a lot of us not have to talk about his arms forever and ever again. But look, I think he makes it right now. I think it's as simple as, is he among our best 53? Obviously the position gets weighted a whole lot, but would you rather take, I don't know, one your 6 receiver over Marcus Jones, considering especially Marcus Jones, if you want to put him in there as a gadget guy, has done it before, which is Benoist to this offensive staff, unlike the past ones. That's why, Matt. While we're on receivers, I want to throw in another super chat because, Mike, you might know more about Todd Downing than we do. Doug mentioned to everyone that Tyler Hughes is not experienced and never coached a position at the NFL level before. You saw what the Patriots receivers were a year ago. Mike, are you concerned that Todd Downing, been in the league forever, but has never coached receivers and now has that job?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, just based on what we have kind of gone through, especially last year, you would have liked someone that has had hand-on experience with that group, personally coaching them throughout the years, but as an offensive coordinator, not only in Tennessee, but then as the interim guy last year in New York, it's not as if he doesn't know what they need to do. This is just going to be a little bit more intensive for him. But look, I know his success rate hasn't been awesome in his last few years as a coach, but he's pretty well thought of around the league. And I would imagine, look, man, this is your job. This is what you're doing. That if you have half a brain, which I believe he does, he should be able to handle it.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned about Todd Downing as I was about Tyler Hughes when he was hired on as the wide receivers coach, and we'll see how that all pans out. We've got another one here. Craig Promise, Lan Larison makes the 53-man roster. Discuss. I think I've learned better than to overhype undrafted free agents before they even enter the building. Sometimes these guys don't even get out of rookie minicamp. So I would like to actually see Lan Larison on an NFL practice field before I'm ready to include him in a 53-man roster projection. But certainly looks like he could be a fun player.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add on. Hey, would it be great? I mean, it'd be an awesome story. Sure, I'm all for it. But to your point, we haven't seen him actually compete against NFL talent. And then even when we see him later this spring, I don't know what you're getting out of it. It's going to be, can you get to training camp when they start actually hitting you? And, we'll see how Mike runs his camp that way. Can you survive that? Like it's a whole different kind of athlete that he'll be facing.
Yeah, Lane Larison would win, the highlight award from this draft class. Like that I think is why he's going to be a quote unquote fan favorite, Twitter favorite coming in. But we don't know how he performed against FBS competition and his athletic profile. The one area that stood out, he had a sub 7.3 cone, which is great. Like that's what you want to see from him. 4.57 40, I think it was. He's a little heavier than Travion Henderson, so I think that bulk might need to apply early on the NFL if he's going to make it in terms of the roster. He might be in the mix for punt return, but then we just talked about a guy who probably has that job in Marcus Jones. So look, I think it's a name to watch. I don't think it's a name to lock in. It should be fun, but there's so much to translate right away without an obvious elite trait or skill to say he'll contribute. Like the second round pick is your third running back or second running back at a 3. He's got to beat out Antonio Gibson or be in the mix, I think, to make the roster.
I will say there is a spot for fourth running back to make this team behind Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson, and Travion Henderson. So like, I don't know if it's gonna be him. I don't know if it's gonna be Terrell Jennings. It could wind up being no one, but like there is at least a spot. But yeah.
If they'll tackle on special teams, I think that's a bigger key, right? Because they carried 3 most of last year in different regime and all that. But
I mean, in some of Belichick's years, didn't they carry like 5 during like the Mike Gillislee years? They had like 5 running backs on this team, which is
good Lord,
pretty wild. But Anthony Landry also asks, he says, we'll always be here to support the Kyed family in this wonderful cause. Thank you so much, Anthony. How much cap room do we have? And do you expect another move? They still have around what, like 60 million in cap space?
67 million. Mike, do you know how much the next team has? Second most cap space?
38.
42.
Hey,
million.
not bad. Not bad.
So no one likes this answer. I'm going to deliver it anyway. They want to roll over a good chunk of that to next year when a lot of these contracts that they just signed the free agents to are going to have bigger cap hits. I think also, though, you have 67. You could certainly, as we talked about with Mina, absorb maybe a holdout in the summer if you want to trade for someone. So I think they have a lot of flexibility, but there's no one on the market that would command that type of salary. And look, if you have it next year when you really want to spend and you're a piece or two away, because right now you're a year away from maybe being a year away, great. But they're just not there yet. Neither is the market, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't mind them doing something else, but there's just not a lot of guys out there. And like Colton Miller would have made sense, but they just grabbed Will Campbell. So like, I don't know. I don't know what move it would be in that spot, but they do have a lot of cap space, and I think it would be beneficial to carry some of that over. We can keep just getting through these super chats. What do you guys think?
Let me go one big picture to Mike, just because.
Sure.
What was the most interesting thing to you about the draft? Like we spent so much time talking about Will Campbell, and Travion Henderson's really good, and you mentioned the pass protection, which I think is going to be a really salient, applicable point. But the whole draft class, whether it was the people in the front office, the players that will soon be on the field, what was the most interesting thing to you?
I mean, I think there are several things that stood out. One of the things that I also mentioned today when I wrote was, you look at the character element, and we talked about it so much during free agency and the people that they brought in, and they were saying basically this is clear and important to us. But then we got a couple times where Vrabel said, well, not everybody basically can be choir boys. Like if that was the case, as he said, I think to Chris Long, you and I would still be playing. That's just not the way it works. And so I think you saw, again, Will Campbell, captain, Travion Henderson, captain, Kyle Williams is like incredibly well respected by teammates, well liked by teammates. Woodson, sort of the same thing. And then in the 5th round, Swinson, who had some headbutting as Dane Brugler reported in The Beast, and I'd heard some different things. And so he's you're trying to build this culture in this room where guys don't step out of line because they don't want to disappoint teammates, and this is the direction we're all pulling in. And that was like the first one. Again, I guess you could maybe say Stephon Diggs a little bit just in terms of his selfish nature, although selfish nature because he wants the football, but he also does really care about winning. So parse that however you want.
He just thinks they're correlated. If I'm not getting the ball, we're not doing the best we can to win.
Exactly. And again, sometimes that was detrimental to what was going on in Buffalo, and it's the reason why he's not in Buffalo anymore. But I think Swinson was a guy that the talent is just too good. And, when I asked Elliott the question, do you talk to him? Well, we talked to different guys. But basically he said he really jumped out of practice that day. So to me, it was like, I'm not, I don't know if he loved the answers that he got, but I think they just looked at the player and said, he's everything that Mike wants in a guy coming off the edge. He really gets after the passer. He was probably the second best player on LSU's defense last year. So, like, really good conference. Like, we'll roll it. Like, this is what we're paying Mike the money for. This is what Terrell Williams is here for. Like, if we can get this kid pulling in the direction that we're all going in, we may have found ourselves a really good find in round 5.
Before we get you out of here, Mike, we've got Taylor Kyles next. Daisy Myhusky said to Mike Giardi, if you were to walk into the Patriots wide receiver room right now, how stinky do you think it would be?
Let's put it at like, what are they, about the 22nd best wide receiver room now, 23rd, based on some of the things they've done.
Boo!
Well, that's way less stinky than it's been. And I think the offensive coordinator will have a better idea of how to, I don't know, find some easy completions and get the ball to some of these playmakers. And they've certainly created how many receivers are on the roster right now? Like 11? Like,
I think we're down.
They've created a level of competition where you could look at it from the outside and say, okay, well, Williams is making the team, Diggs is making the team, Pop is making the team, Hollins is making the team. You'll definitely have a 5th, probably Jalen Polk, just because you punt on a second rounder that fast. And then after that, it's like Booty, Bourne. Who else am I missing? Baker. Like, there are people there that have NFL talent who are going to be competing for a job. I mean, there's some Patriot fans that think Booty was their best receiver last year, and he could be like on that line. So that's a good sign. That means you've elevated the level of talent in the room.
100%. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. And we are going to bring on Taylor Kyles next. So, all right. Good to have you on.
See you next week on the podcast, Mike Giardi. Thank you very much for joining.
What is up, Taylor?
How we doing, fellas? Party people. Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well. Before we get you on here, before we start going, you can donate at princesshalleforever.com. You can send in super chats. We still got some super chats to get into, but Taylor, 3 days of the draft have gone. It's been a few days since. What are your overall thoughts on this Pats draft class?
My overall thoughts are it was about as good as we thought it was. I feel like on the days, like obviously day 3, maybe threw a wrench in things with all the specialists and threw people off a little bit, but they made up for it with what looks like right now, at least a very strong class of undrafted free agents. I was honestly ready to turn my brain off, give Liz a little bit of attention. And then as I'm getting ready, I just see these names and I'm like, all right, now maybe the brain's not turned out quite yet, but this really is, I think, the first class that we have a reason to get excited about because there's credibility in the building. They took a bunch of players with track records of success. So, yeah, I'm excited to see these guys finally on the field.
Taylor, we've gotten a lot of questions about those undrafted free agents, and since you did not pay attention to your girlfriend after not talking to her, I presume, for 72 straight hours of draft coverage, I want you to answer as I find this question about basically the UDFA most likely to make the roster. And no one's going to hold this to you, right? This is a charity fundraiser. It's April 28th. But whether it's Land Larison or somebody else, who do you see is most likely to make the roster from the undrafted free agents?
I'm going Brock Lampy, honestly, the fullback, because one, Giovanni Ricci just got cut today. Honestly, when I did my whole depth chart, I had Brock behind Ricci, but he was higher graded, actually, just based on the things that I've seen. So we know that Josh McDaniels loves the fullback in his offense. It feels like a Jakob Johnson situation where they had a guy that was kind of under the radar when they signed him, but he fit the mold of a fullback, and you can get those guys because there's not a whole lot of teams that even use them in their run scheme. And obviously, with all the running backs and everything that they've got right now, I think this is going to be a really exciting kind of run game, just schematically what they can do. And they don't have a fullback on the roster. So Lampy is one I feel like I'd be very surprised if he doesn't make it just because he fills a role that they don't really have anywhere else on the roster.
Yeah, and I would say this, too, to people following along. Pay attention to the money because that will tell you how the team feels about these players, in addition to the competition and the other offers that they have from other teams. But the more money you have, the more likely you are to stick. And so this is still trickling out. And this is if you have a lot of free time. If you don't like to pay attention to undrafted free agent contracts and amount of guarantees on a Tuesday, I completely understand. None of us have lives, so we have the time to do that. Because I would throw in the tight ends there too, right? Like I can't remember for the life of me, and I always
CJ Dippre.
Dippre, thank you. Not Dippre, as I always want to say. Blocking tight end like that, he would be close on my list after Lampy, who, by the way, coached by James White last year at Northern Illinois, where he was a volunteer. So James, I have no doubt, had a conversation with Josh McDaniels about him before they signed him as an undrafted free agent.
I mean, obviously people were pretty high on the Patriots undrafted free agent class. And I think that a few of these guys actually have a chance. Like Ben Woldridge, he's the only third quarterback on the roster right now. Well, but once again, like I did a 53 man roster projection. I left him off just because it's like, I'd like to see a quarterback actually on the practice field before I put him on a 53 man roster. But if they do want to use that emergency third quarterback role, he's the only one that's actually on the roster right now. So he's got a chance. But no, I like Lampy a lot just because like if they want to use a fullback, he would be the guy right now. We do have another super chat question right now. If Landon Larson makes a roster, which media member will wrestle a steer with him as a Sunday morning feel good story? That's a really good question. I don't think I'm going to be the one wrestling a steer with Landon Larson. So I'll take my name out of the running.
So
Coward.
my dad was actually like a black cowboy. He does this.
Wow.
Like, he's got the boots. He's got all the like literally like the horses, like the mice and everything in his house. So you know what? I might call him up for some tips. I'm definitely doing my research before we actually get to meet Landon Larson because I know that he said his parents told him like you can play football for a little while, but you can bull ride forever. I'm like, can you? Is that a thing that you do like well into your old age? I don't know, but
you do it until you reach the age that I guess you do until the steers come off maybe or the stirrups come up or whatever. Yes, no, I know. Yeah.
Taylor, has your dad ever physically thrown a hat into the ring? Like I feel like a cowboy should do this. You know, we all say it, but how many people have actually done that?
I'm gonna have to ask him. The only like cowboy related story I ever get is when he tells to make my mom upset because he always says that she poisoned one of his horses. He's like, yeah, I love my horse so much, and she just got jealous. And one day I woke up and he was gone, and I saw the poison. And I'm like, as I got older, I'm like, Dad, I'm not sure that's true. And I'm like, yeah, stop telling him that stuff. So I don't know how true it is, but that's the closest thing to a cowboy story I've gotten so far. But now I got some material to open it up, so maybe I'll get the hat in the ring story.
Absolutely.
That is so dark. That is
just my family, I guess. We got weird senses of humor.
Yeah.
Just putting some other super chats up here. Just here, sports are my favorite voices in the industry. Here for a great cause. Go Pats. Taylor, I like doing this with you. I want you to go negative for a second. What was your least favorite?
Least favorite? Initially,
least favorite pick.
I mean, if we're just being totally real, Julian Ashby, right? Like, no offense to him, but I wasn't exactly expecting the long snapper call, but that feels a little bit easy. I would say Craig Woodson was the closest, and that was mostly because once he was drafted, like most people, I hadn't really watched a ton of tape on him. So I go and I watch the one game that I had access to, and it was Syracuse. Come to find out, Syracuse was literally the worst game that he played last season, at least according to PFF. Like, he's covering tight ends a ton, like more than he did in the other games. And they're just like picking on him, and it's just completion after completion. And so safe to say, I don't think that's his best role, but I did get access to some more tape. And in that like split field, deep safety role, I definitely think he's better, going to be a good special teamer. But I mean, we got a lot of like trenches, we got like defensive linemen on day 3. We got the skill players with all the speed. So admittedly, the safety was the one I was probably the most disappointed in. Also because I didn't know who it was, but that really is nitpicking in this class. I feel like I just got to give that little caveat, but I'm sorry, Craig, I got to go. I got to go with you.
Who of all the picks, because, we talked about Will Campbell forever. We know he's going to play. Kyle Williams, was my favorite pick. I know that's shared in a lot of different places. Is there a player or a potential impact as a rookie that in your mind, again, April 28th, we're not talking enough about yet? Like, this guy could start or be, a real impact player that is not among top 3 picks.
So Jared Wilson, right? It's got to be Jared Wilson. If it's not top 3, I'm going with the 4th. And I feel like it's still fair because he doesn't have his guaranteed role yet, right? We got Garrett Bradbury at center, and it's probably going to be a competition at that left guard spot. They can throw one of like 5 players at the wall to see what sticks. But I actually spoke to Duke Manyweather today, who trained both Will Campbell and Jared Wilson, and he was very high on Jared. As he told us, like, the guy, yes, 1-year starter, but he has spent years practicing against all this big, scary guys on Georgia's defensive line that we talk about every year in the draft. And that was really how he kind of came up in that system and then finally gets his opportunity. And being in the SEC with all these complex pressure schemes that actually trickle up to the NFL a lot of the time, he's not a guy that's going to go in there and be in over his head. So Jared Wilson, I wouldn't be shocked if he's the left guard behind Garrett or next to Garrett Bradbury, since that's the veteran. You know what you're getting in him. But really, I'd be stunned if Jared Wilson wasn't somewhere on that offensive line week 1.
Yeah, I have a strong opinion about moving Jared Wilson to guard just because I wouldn't really want to mess around with him that much if he is your future starting center. But I mean, ultimately, I think that you hope that Jared Wilson can win the starting role at center. But how would you feel about that? Like, what is your opinion on him basically not snapping that much for a year, having to learn a somewhat new position for him with the hope that after a year or two, then he slides back to center? Do you think that could hinder his development at all at center?
So he actually told us that he started out as a guard. So
Right.
he transitioned to center, which is a little bit different. That gives me a little hope because if he was able to learn it and then as his 1 year as a starter, do it pretty decently, I would hope that would continue. But that being said, with Chukwuma Okorafor, my whole thing last year when he went to left was, well, he did it in college, right? And as we know, when you do it at a different level of competition, there's different techniques you learn. Maybe you just realize you were more even Layden Robinson looked more comfortable on the left side than he did on the right, weirdly. Right. So sometimes it's super bizarre. Maybe Jared Wilson's you know what? I actually like this left guard stuff even more, but he seems like a really smart guy. And again, the fact that he said that he has versatility to play all 3 spots, I'll trust him for now, but when the pads come on and the heat ramps up a little bit, we're going to see.
Yeah. All right. So I just want to remind everyone who's watching and listening, you donate $10 or more, you get your question answered from us right away. If not a little bit later, you get 1 raffle ticket to win a Patriots signed football. Kendrick Bourne is the headliner. There are a dozen more signatures on top of that. So donate. All the money goes to cancer research and Doug's campaign with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. Pivoting back to Taylor, give us a take you're on an island with. In addition to the unending positivity and the good vibes you are putting out into the world, you are also not afraid to stand on your own and say, this is how I see it. This is what it is. I'm going to smile through everything. It could be related to the draft or the upcoming season. Just where are you on an island?
I think the run game can be really, really good this year, one of the better ones in the league, if not one of the best in the league. And I feel especially when we had the Genty conversation, that's different. Obviously, they actually have Will Campbell. They also have Jared Wilson. But I didn't really understand the narrative because you got Mike Nwenu, right? He's been resetting the line of scrimmage for years. You got Morgan Moses. The whole problem last year was you had Tremontre Jacobs, who, bless his heart, the guy should not have been starting as many games as he did. And Morgan Moses, yes, he will get injured. He'll get banged up. He's on the older side. The dude can still play, right? They signed him for a reason. That tandem I'm really looking forward to. Garrett Bradbury is very hit or miss, and I'll absolutely acknowledge that. But when seeing even the good clips that he had, I'm thinking, all right, next to a guy like Mike Nwenu, some optimism there. And Layden Robinson, we have questions about him as a pass protector. Obviously, that's assuming he's the left guard, but that's where he was last season. I thought he was the best guy they had. He was a fantastic run blocker. There's no question that he can succeed in that vein. And then I was thinking, okay, if Will Campbell really is the guy, and then it's Layden, I don't really see where the weak spot is that people think this run game can't be very good. So now that they have Jared Wilson, who seems like he's going to factor in somewhere with 11-inch hands, absolutely terrifying. Will Campbell, who's a fantastic run blocker in his own right. I mean, obviously the passing game has got to be good enough for them to be taken seriously, and I hope it will. But I think the run game is going to be really what powers this offense besides just Drake May. And now if they've got Travion Henderson, a legit home run threat, hopefully Antonio Gibson can show more of what he has behind a decent O-line. I think this is going to be a really good run game, and they've got Josh McDaniels in the fullback pick. That's really what blends it together, because not often have you seen Josh McDaniels with a bad run game. So I'm just hoping this all comes together.
So I'm going to move Taylor over to my side over here, and now it's me and Taylor ganging up on Andrew over here on the right because Andrew and I, as I've discussed before on this show, have disagreed about the quality of the Patriots offensive line and whether they can handle a running back before. But I think Travion Henderson also is the kind of back who has the speed, cut outside, the big playability to potentially thrive, even if the offensive line isn't where they want it to be this season.
It would be
thoughts. Do you have a rebuttal before we bring on Michael Hurley?
No, look, to me, it's about the value of the 38th overall pick, and I would not do this, generally speaking, for most teams in the league. And in a deep running back class, I'll say it again, there were good running backs available late 3rd round, early 4th round. This does not mean I think Travion Henderson stinks. It doesn't mean I don't think he will succeed and perhaps become the long-term starter. The first tweet I had Friday night was potential starter in the NFL 3-down back. The next tweet got a lot more attention. It is what it is. Taylor's
To be
point,
fair, the
though,
next tweet
about
was, "I hate Trevion Henderson.
Jack
with
Sawyer,
every fiber of my
yeah.
being." Yeah.
But
I saw the Sawyer. It was hard to miss.
It's a point that I remember making last summer, right? When we were talking about the offensive line so much in camp, is like the run blocking conversation is very separate from the pass protection issues, of which there were plenty, and that, portended basically the rest of the season, what their issues were going to be. The best version of this Patriots team, without question, involves a top 10 running game. And it will probably take some Drake May designed runs to get in there. It will take some off-schedule runs to get in there. It will take Garrett Bradbury to be good enough, not good, in pass protection so that he can run block. Because to Taylor's point, you have run-first players in there. Will Campbell's going to struggle in pass protection. Rookie tackles do. Okay, that's fine. But if you get to set the terms of engagement, like all those Titans teams did with Mike Vrabel, we're going to hit you in the mouth. And that punch is going to be Derrick Henry. In this case, it'll be Ramondre Stevenson. And yes, Trevion Henderson. That's possible. That works because the offensive line is not bottom 10, even though they were 32nd last year. The talent's been upgraded more in terms of run blocking than it has pass protection. I just need to see it. There's just been too much bad offensive line play the last 3 years that I'm not just going to try to speak it into existence, but I'm open to it.
Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful talking to you, and we're going to bring on our next guest, Michael Hurley. Thanks again, Taylor. All right, we are going to bring on Michael Hurley. Michael, you got 2 hours of sleep last night. You flew in from Florida. I like the Floridian shirt that you're wearing right now. Did you get a nap? Are you feeling more well-rested now?
When you take a nap, and for anyone, hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Here we are. When you take a nap, usually it's a conscious decision. You're like, oh, I'm going to, the one that happened today, it happened. I had nothing to do with it. And
the nap took you.
The nap took me, and I feel great. So happy to still be here.
That is fantastic. And as we bring you on, make sure that you donate to princesshalleforever.com. Send in your super chat questions. Michael, I feel like obviously all Pat Chat listeners heard what we both thought of the draft. I think that this is a good opportunity to take some super chat questions. Are you okay with that? Do you feel good about that? Because we have Casey Reed. This is not a question. He just sent a super chat. The difference between the last 2 drafts is crazy. I feel like Elliott Wolf, spelled incorrectly, but that's okay, Casey, has shown how bad Mayo was on almost every level. I feel like Mayo was such an absolute shit show that last year's draft be a mulligan. Michael, how do you answer that?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, it's a fair point. I'm curious how much Elliott Wolf had to do with this year. And I don't think I'm the only person that thinks that, considering there is a man in charge and his name's Mike Vrabel. And everyone else has a job to do, but Vrabel is the one driving it. And I've said this before. I don't know where or when or why, but I know I've said it before. And there's something about having a guy like Vrabel on his second chance, where he's already been through a team. He's had his ups and downs in his departure. And now you kind of have your second chance to cement yourself or fade away. And there's that urgency. When you compare it to last year, Gerard Mayo had this, I didn't expect to turn it around in year 1. There was never any sort of urgency to be good now. And I think that is the biggest difference you're seeing with Vrabel where he is.
Yeah. I'm going to skip ahead here in a second. We can come back to draft stuff, but I know you were in Florida and we did this event a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, who's your favorite day 2 guy? And you're like, got me. I don't have anything. So we talk about Vrabel, upgraded head coach. Drake May, year 2 leap is going to be huge. Josh McDaniels, upgraded offensive coordinator. Offensive line's better. The weapons are better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does all of that add up in your mind to a team that could and or will push for the playoffs?
Win 10 games? Yes. I'm going to mark it here. I'm going to do it 2 years in a row. Last year worked out very poorly for me.
No.
In the middle of
last year?
In the middle, I messed up last year, and I got bamboozled. I bamboozled myself.
Michael forgot how to do addition. It was tough. He somehow got to 10 wins. It happens.
People forget they were 1-0 and almost beat the Seahawks.
1-0 is very different from 1-0. Like that's
they were well.
I mean, they were on pace for 17 wins. I don't want to defend my podcast partner.
Put him next to you like you did Taylor. I cannot be.
Yeah,
you guys want to be in a corner. And
there we go.
2024 Patriots should have been
nice.
10-win team. I don't want anything to do with that.
Do love the Trevion Henderson pick, by the way. So you can put me next to Doug.
Perfect.
To answer your question, and Doug and I talked about it earlier. I'll give it to you this way. Last year, the Commanders were coming off a 4-win season. They made some moves that were common sense and good, and they ended up becoming a playoff team. I feel as though you've at least opened that possibility, and I'm almost like, are we missing the forest for the trees? Where it's like, great draft, great decisions on the coaching staff, all these great things that we all thought of, and they're doing them. Great. Maybe that is like a perverse way of looking at it, because if you lay it all out, everything they're doing seems to be a reasonably intelligent move that should advance them. Like 7 wins should be the floor. Honestly, you're talking about an easy opponent schedule and much improvements and a coach who knows what he's doing. 7 should be the floor. I don't know what the ceiling is, but I think you're working in that 7 to 10 range and having actually a football season to watch, which is encouraging.
Yeah,
what was the most
I like
interesting
to
thing
take
about the draft to you, Michael? Just that you check in, picks, players, control. Elliot Wolf talked about a debate that we haven't even hit on yet. Like, what was the most interesting thing?
Yeah.
I think, and again, it's what I thought they should do. So I obviously think it's smart. After spending so much energy, resource, and focus on defense and free agency, they went heavy on the offense with their first 4 picks. I like all those picks. I think all 4 of those guys are going to make the team. And I just think that's an important step for what the team is going to be moving. Yeah, I mean, the only risk would be injury, or if, they drafted the wrong receiver, which I suppose is possible. I think if you want to nitpick, or if you want to take issue with the Henderson pick, they could have doubled up at OT, or they could have taken a receiver earlier, because I think by the time they picked again, 5 more tackles and 5 more receivers have come off the board. So you're working on a smaller pool there. But I think Henderson might have higher reliability than some of the guys you might have got there, and more impact. So I understand if you want to make a case at that second round pick, but I personally think it was a good one. So I don't know. And that they really had one reach, right? Like the safety they took feels like a reach, sort of a gut check or a hunch, whatever it might have been. But their next picks after that with Farmer and Swinson feel like sort of steals for what you can get in the mid round. So it was a good draft.
It felt like, in retrospect, this like weird combination of a Bengals draft from 15 years ago, where they just looked like they were like drafting off a consensus draft board, a Bill Belichick draft from 10 years ago, where they're reaching for safeties and drafting specialists at the end. And then also maybe some combination of like recent Eagles drafts, where they just wind up taking the player that everyone like wants their team to draft, which in this case would have been like Joshua Farmer and Braden Swinson. So it's like this weird combination of all 3, where it feels like they're drafting off a media list, but also doing a lot of things that make sense, and also doing things that are completely out of the blue, which I was at a charity event late in the draft. So I missed a lot of the discourse, I guess I would say, about the long snapper and the kicker and the left tackle out of Missouri. But I didn't really necessarily despise any of those picks that much.
The long
but
snapper
as I was
pick.
saying with Danny and Danny, I'm used to Bill Belichick drafting long snappers in the 5th round and kickers in the 4th round. So the 7th and 6th rounds weren't that bad.
And like I said earlier, it's one thing if you're drafting a long snapper out of Navy and you're about to win a bunch of Super Bowls and your team is stacked from 1 to 48 and you're really tinkering with the margins of 48 to 53. Ultimately, there probably wasn't a player at 251 who was going to change the fortunes of the Patriots. But I still, that pick is so stupid. I appreciate that they did it, because they had to do something stupid.
To some other team. They had
if you're gonna do something stupid, do it at 251 and not 4 overall. Right. So it's fine.
We got 2 super chats I want to get to, one of which names Hurley. The first one does not, but I think this is a fair question. Again, if you want your question answered, $10 or more, all the money goes to Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, supporting Doug's campaign in honor of Hallie Cancer Research, the best possible cause. And you get a raffle ticket for every $10 to win a Kendrick Bourne and others signed football. This question, what group, so position group here, Hurley, do you think has improved the most from the 2024 Patriots that you last saw playing, whatever it was, January 4th or 5th?
I mean, it's not receivers.
Really?
I mean, if Stephon Diggs comes back in his prime Stephon Diggs, maybe you can have a conversation about it. But I just think it's probably the defensive line. I mean, that's where they invested the most in free agency, and they made a couple picks that I don't think were necessarily on many people's vision boards going in. So I think what they did there is probably the most significant. It might not be the most exciting. And now it gets into, we all, I think, unanimously praised the draft. And we all, I think, unanimously a couple weeks ago at that panel you mentioned, said they were going to take Will Campbell. And now it's showtime. Now it's, can he play left tackle in the NFL? How fast can he play at this level? There's a lot to like about his outlook, his approach, his attitude, his toughness, his drawl, his appreciation for Bass Pro Shops, all of that. But now it's time to show you can do it. And if he can't, ultimately, you still got a big problem there. But now we get to find out how he is.
I kind of like the pick of O-line. Like, wide receiver definitely improved significantly, but like the offensive line was such a disaster last year. To add a new left tackle, a new right tackle, a veteran and a rookie at center, it just like, it changes the entire landscape of that group, even more so to me than Diggs and Kyle Williams and Mac Hollins do at wide receiver. Like, you almost have an entirely new offensive line this year.
I guess the reason I said it's not receivers and went D-line is because not only is this the first time ever in our adult lives, at least, or maybe our lives period, where the Patriots are getting praised for having arguably the best draft in the NFL, but it's also, I don't know, is it the first time they signed what was the top free agent on many people's lists going in Milton Williams, where he was, the number one available free agent on a lot of people's lists. So it's a weird sort of time to be following football in New England from that regard.
So I would say this. I think the best version of the Patriots needs offensive line to be the answer, to Doug's point. Like, you go from 31st in pass block win rate, 32nd dead last in the league in run block win rate. If you make a jump 16 spots to just average, that is the most improved, and that will help the rest of your offense more than even Stephon Diggs starting week 1 could. Defensive line, I suppose for now, like in this moment, is the answer. But the way that I think the receiving group will change with all of them having a functional NFL position coach in the room for the first time in honestly a few years, right? Because Troy Brown's not even a receivers coach with the Giants right now, will help Demario Douglas, will help whatever's left with Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, not to mention Kyle Williams coming in. And Matt Collins is like a proven NFL dude. Sure, he's been on 7 different teams and has 0 pairs of shoes in his house, but like, the guy can play football. So it's up there for me.
We've got Jason McCourty coming on very soon, but let's throw out this super chat first, Michael. I've been waiting for Hurley all night. This is Matt Messahos. Off the top of your heads, what are your top 5 pop punk albums of all time? Michael, I'll give you a chance to stew on this for a second because I used my time to think of it. I'm going to go with Green Day Dookie just because it's a classic. I'm going to go with Blink-182 Dude Ranch. I'm going to go with Alkaline Trio From Here to Infirmary. I'm going to go with Saves the Day Through Being Cool. I'm going to go with Newfound Glory Self-Titled. What are your 5?
Yeah, I mean, it's an impossible task, if we're being honest. You went a little more old school than I like. I'd probably go Take Off Your Pants and Jacket just because of what it did for the culture in 2001. I mean, I've tweeted this before. There are kids that were not freshmen in high school when Take Off Your Pants and Jacket came out, and I can't fathom how sad their lives are. Like, that sucks for you. So I was so fortunate. I'd probably put Newfound Glory Self-Titled in there. Just, again, it's the same exact era. It's the same exact sound. I might throw, I'd have to think, I'm just going personal. Like, Alkaline Trio's got to be in there somewhere. I'm just not sure. I'll probably put Goddammit in there, but their later stuff is really good too with Good Morning and Crimson. This is really the draft talk. I was not prepped for this. So those, and then I'm throwing Taking Back Sunday in because Tell All Your Friends, because that's just iconic. I don't know how many I've named, but I'm rounding it out.
Just throw in Green Day Dookie to cap it off.
I'm not trying to prove anyone. I mean, I had Dookie on tape way back when. I might go like more on the pop side because of how this had like the crossover culture. I might go Ocean Avenue by Yellowcard just because it was a gateway drug for a lot of people into faster, louder music.
All right, CLNS, clip that one. Clip the top 5 pop punk albums. All right, Andrew, I'm assuming you don't have an answer for this.
No, I was going to co-sign on Hurley saying I was not prepared for this, and but I love all of these suggestions. I've seen Green Day twice. That was the only band listed that I've seen live. But
let's bring in another guy who also doesn't have an answer for this. Jason McCourty. I don't think you have a top 5 pop punk albums of all time, do you?
I heard Blink-182. I know that, so I'll just go with Blink-182 is my only band that I'm going with.
Jason, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Good to see you guys, man.
Good to see you too. First of all, let's start it off. And Michael, you can stay on, you can drop off, you can do whatever you want. But Jason, what were your overall thoughts about the Patriots draft class? Not sure how closely you studied it, but just overall thoughts on what they were able to come away with.
I would say excited. I think obviously you got a new head coach coming in, and Mike Vrabel. You have a second-year quarterback in Drake May, who showed promise as a rookie with not a ton around him from an offensive standpoint. So the beginning of the draft, there was a lot of talk. Do they try to trade back? Is there anyone that wants to move up? They stay put, and you go and get Will Campbell. And then you look at this guy, and the night he gets drafted, he says, "I'll die protecting Drake May." Like, New England Patriots, like Foxborough, like that just fits. Then I'm watching the video when he gets up to the stadium and he realizes there's a Bass Pro Shop right in the back door of the stadium, and you can see he's through the roof. So you talk about a guy that just fits, probably personality wise, and then obviously who he is on the football field, and the short arms and all of that will to be determined. But they get a left tackle, a position that they absolutely need. And then the next two picks gets you excited because they were a team that lacked that big play ability. So you get Travion Henderson from Ohio State, who can be a nice 1-2 punch to Ramondre Stevenson, and then obviously Antonio Gibson as well. But he is somebody that is different from those guys, pass protection wise, the speed that he brings. And then Kyle Williams, a big play threat, a guy that's dangerous with the ball in his hands. So then obviously you go safety with Woodson and some other picks, Swinson, add in depth. And then nothing makes a Patriots draft than drafting a kicker and then freaking drafting a long snapper. Like, it's like you got to get back to some of the old ways, getting some positions like that. So I like the Patriots draft. I think for them, you have so many parts of your team that need to be filled, so many roster spots, so many needs that they really couldn't go wrong in the draft. But when you see what they're able to do as a fan, you have to be excited.
So Jason, we have two questions that
my favorite thing about the Will Campbell Lighthouse clip, by the way, was that he knew the lore that Matt Light had hunted behind the stadium. Like that shows you that he had really like done his research on the Patriots. He'd been like watching these podcast clips of old Patriot stuff. So I really did.
That is true.
Cool. Yeah,
that is true. Matt Light references lets you know he's digging in deep.
Yes.
I wish Matt Light had stayed around in like some capacity, even like as a QC, the way that he just seemed to needle Bill, like in a way that no one else did before or after the pranks, actually having a firearm like on the premises of the stadium, just putting stuff in his car, like just getting on Brady's case. Like we bring up Matt Light now, it's like, oh, if Will Campbell was Matt Light, would he be a success? I say smashing success, and not just because of the on-field play, but if we get those same amount of stories out of Will Campbell that we did Matt Light, God bless. Give him the red jacket now.
No doubt about it. Matt Light, and I didn't get a chance to play with him. I heard stories from my brother. Then he came on Good Morning Football when I was there and went over some of the skits and some of the pranks that he was pulling in the locker room. Matt Light's a guy that fits any era of football. You just plop him in a locker room and automatically he's a glue guy because he lightens the mood. The fact that he was pulling pranks on Belichick, and this was back in the day too. This was earlier on Belichick, not the kind of smoother, softer Belichick that we're seeing now doing CBS interviews and all types of stuff. So the fact that Matt Light was able to do those things lets you know how special he was.
Okay, so you brought it up. I was going to wait to ask you about this. You've seen the 8 minutes of CBS, yes?
Yes, I have.
Okay, all right. We need a breakdown, like a film breakdown. Jason McCourty's. You're on the board with Dan Orlovsky. What were your takeaways? What did you see? What did you hear?
You know, who I would love to break that down is Bill himself, like in a team meeting, talking about it, the references, the way the camera cuts from him to Jordan and all the in-between interactions, the silent moments, all of that. I mean, as you're watching it, it's stunning. It's like the classic Bill, but also some new stuff. Like you turn it on and automatically you see the Navy sweatshirt with holes all in it. And you're like, that's my guy. That's the Bill that I know. And then the interview starts and it's just like, man, I wouldn't expect him to get those type of questions. But then he's just awkward and he doesn't say anything. And you're like, yup, that's the Bill I know. He doesn't want to answer that question. So it was a fantastic watch would be how I would describe it. You can take that whichever way you want.
still a master in not answering the questions. And I think it did come off a little bit more awkward on this one, just because he was doing it with a smile on his face. Like he didn't want to be Bill to us. He didn't want to be Bill in the press conference room where he's willing to be as angry and mean as possible. Like he was trying to put the smile on while still playing the old Bill Belichick role. I wanted to ask you, Jason, obviously back in your day, back when you were drafted, it was only 2 days of the NFL draft. But still, you're a late round pick. So I wanted to get your perspective on what some of these guys who did have to wait until the third day when they were drafted, like, what was that experience like for you? Did you have your phone next to you the whole time? Like, what did you try to go out and do anything that day? What were those 2 days like for you?
Man, well, the first day was cool. I was just sitting back, relaxing. Kenny Britt from Rutgers, one of my teammates, ended up getting drafted. That's the one good thing. And I had absolutely no pressure day one. I knew there wasn't a shot in hell I was getting drafted in the first round. So I was actually just watching as a fan. The second day is extremely stressful. I remember my mom going in her room and kind of just getting away from it. But no, I sat around with my phone the entire time. And I can remember, I think it was maybe the Rams and the 49ers, two teams called in like the fourth round. And it was just like, we just want to make sure like we got the right number. We're interested, but no draft. So it was just like, damn, maybe I'm gonna get drafted soon. And it wasn't till the end of the sixth round. So it's a long day. And I think whatever draft coverage you watch, it was well documented of Shedeur Sanders, of him having to wait. But that was hundreds of prospects. Some didn't even get their names called on draft day. So as much as we focused on his story, there were so many other stories that it didn't go as planned, or even guys that did get drafted earlier didn't possibly get the celebration that they deserved on the TV coverage, because that was a focal point. But it's an extremely long day for a lot of those guys. But at the end of it, you think about it, for a lot of these kids, like, this is a lifelong dream that you were able to make a reality. So whether you got drafted first pick overall or whether you were Mr. Irrelevant, it's still something that is truly special to hear your name called in the NFL draft and to know you're getting an opportunity to put on a helmet for somebody's team and get a chance to go out there and compete.
So, Jason, I know you said they were the Rams and the 49ers, but have you considered that the people that called you were actually Jack's Ulrich?
He was probably what, 5 years old at the time, so it might have been a legit mistake at that point, maybe a just straight up pocket dial opposed to a planned prank as it was this time. Listen, I remember Muhammad Sanu, who came out a year or two after me from Rutgers. I remember him going through that, getting prank called, and how crazy it was at that point. So this has been going on for years. The difference here is somehow or another you had just kids getting people's number, whether it's the internet or in this space, a kid that grew up in the NFL, because Jeff Ulbrich played in the NFL and is coaching the NFL for an extremely long time. So obviously this wasn't a mistake. This was something that was planned, that was ugly, that was vicious. Hopefully that he learns from this and doesn't make a mistake like this again and realizes what he did. Like, Shedeur was a kid that was waiting around for a very long time, and to get that call, and I can only imagine how your heart drops when the phone finally rings, to not know what the hell is going on the other end. That was just terrible.
Yeah, it sucked. It loser behavior completely.
No doubt about it.
For sure. Just a reminder to people, you can donate at princesshallieforever.com. You can send in your super chats. Any $10 donation gets you a raffle ticket for a Kendrick Bourne signed football. You had mentioned Shedeur Sanders, Jason, and obviously we'll get back into the Patriots a little bit, but what was your opinion on that whole situation? Just like the fall that he had, do you think it was just the NFL or like media catching up to the NFL? Was it potentially some of the interviews that he's having with teams? Like, what was your take on the whole situation of why he fell and the reaction to why he fell?
I would have to say, I think it was a little bit of everything you just said. And there's a lot of people on TV or on social media, and everybody's coming up with their own assumption of what it was or what it could have been, all the way from collusion to mentions of Colin Kaepernick and all types of things. And to be completely honest, I text some people that I know around the league. There is no clear-cut answer of why he fell in the draft. It isn't just as simple of saying one team saying at the combine he blew off our interviewer, he didn't do well at this visit. there's so many different answers that you get when it comes to him. The only thing I was able to come with, at the end of the day, you have 32 teams that have their own preference to pick whoever it is in the hell that they want to come play and represent their team. Part of that evaluation process is turning on the film and seeing who a guy is with his helmet and his shoulder pads on in between those white lines. The other part of the process is getting a chance to know prospects, bringing them in, visiting with them, putting them up on the board, testing how much they know from a football standpoint, and then also seeing if they're a personality fit for your organization and for your locker room. And that determination is up to 32 general managers to decide whether they want a young man to come into their building and play for their football team. So we can pick everybody apart and say it was personal, collusion, and come up with all of these different things. But at the end of the day, no team has to give a reason why they didn't pick a certain prospect. If you don't feel like they were a fit for your team, you don't draft him. And at the end of the day, Shedeur, we know, wasn't a first-round talent that some people on the outside might have thought. I do believe his talent warranted him to be drafted higher than the 5th round. But for whatever reason, all 32 teams passed on him multiple times. So there's something there. I don't think he was colluded against, and owners were all texting each other saying, don't draft Shedeur Sanders just because his father was Dion. I just don't believe that.
Yeah, so you mentioned you're on the phone with people in the league. You know, we're still getting to know Mike Vrabel, the coach, coming in, right? And you faced him a couple of times when we had you here in New England in 18 in the regular season, 19 playoffs. You know, whether it was from those games or things you've heard since, maybe you know something about what it's been like since you've been in New England. Like, what was it like to face a Mike Vrabel team? And if you've heard anything about the last 4 months since he took over?
I know when I was in New England, we got ready. I remember we went down to training camp to practice against him. And I remember some of the veterans at the time when he first got there was just like, man, this dude is tough. He's coming in with a completely different personality, a completely different way of doing things. And like every team, some of the old guys, you get in there and you're grumbling and you're not happy. And next thing you know, all the old guys are up out of there. And the one thing you knew going against a Vrabel-led team was he was going to have his team well coached. And they weren't going to make any mistakes, and they were going to get any advantage that they could get. And I think beyond that of just playing against him, I remember going back to training camp. That was, I want to say, in 2022 or 23, and I had to do a sit-down interview with him. So obviously the PR guy there, Robbie Bourne at the time, I have a really good relationship with. So I go to him. I'm like, all right, I'm about to sit down and talk to Vrabes, and I've heard everything from terrific coach to an absolute a-hole. Like, lead me to the promised land. Tell me where I should be, how I should. And the one thing he told me, he was like, don't assume any answers when you're talking to Vrabel. Don't talk to him and say, hey, well, your O-line is struggling. What is the reason for that? He was like, he may not think the O-line is struggling. If you have a question for him, say, hey, coach, what do you make of the offensive line? And that just kind of let me know that this is a guy that puts the work in, knows who his team is, knows what they're about, and he's not going to allow outside opinions to come in and tell him who or what he is or his team. So I think with Mike Vrabel, you're getting a coach that knows the league, knows the rules inside and out, knows all the advantages he can get, but also a guy that's going to raise the expectations there in New England and hold the players accountable to live up to them.
Definitely. Patriots had a very eventful offseason, obviously from bringing in Mike Vrabel, whole new coaching staff. They've changed over about half the roster at this point. Is it time to have playoff conversations about the Patriots? Like, could they sneak in at this point with everything that they've done? Or do you think there's still maybe a year or two off from that?
I think playoffs is a little bit lofty at this time, but I think this is a team that's better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. Some of the moves that they made, the money, they spent a ton of money in free agency of bringing guys over. And I think they have an infusion of talent. And then alongside that, when you come with new coaches, everybody's on high alert. Not only the moves of the people they brought in, but you just look at some of the people that are now gone, like David Andrews not being there. Then you're looking at them moving on from a guy like Jawan Bentley. The fact that Joe Cardona is the only guy still left on the roster that was a part of the last Super Bowl lets you know that if you're in that locker room, you have to be sitting there looking at one another like, damn, like I better get on my game because things are moving around here. And if I'm not moving in the right direction, I'm going to be out of here as well. So when you have a whole new coaching staff and even the guys that they drafted, they're bringing in people that they feel fit what they want to do. Even the fact that they drafted Woodson in the 4th round, you look at their depth chart and their roster, and you're like, well, safety was definitely not a position of need, because if they brought in Marcus Epps, Jalen Hawkins is still there. Peppers and Duggars, you're assuming, is going to be the 2 starters on the team. Also, they like Del Pettis, and then Marte Mapu. What do you do with him? So there's so many guys in that room, but still they draft a guy in Woodson that can do it all in the secondary. Lined up, blitz, played in the deep part of the field, played in the box. So there are going to be guys that are going to be challenged for roster spots. And whenever you have that much competition, it always rises to the top, the cream. So we're going to see who the best guys are at every position.
So that was a very thoughtful, well-reasoned, detailed answer, Jason. But you work at ESPN, and you sometimes go on First Take. So we have to give you a do-over on that, and we'll get you out on this. We need a hot take. We need something they can clip and spread everywhere, that maybe you sound like an ass, but it's worth it because the producers are happy. The execs are elated that it's gone nuts on YouTube. Something about the Patriots that maybe they will run with this, and you can take it to them tomorrow morning and be like, look, I got the A block right here for you. What would you say about the Patriots that you at least semi-believe in?
I
think
Drake
May, Mike Vrabel, team as a whole.
Well, if it's gonna be a hot take, then you got to talk about either the quarterback or you got to talk about the head coach. So if we're gonna say that part of it, I'd have to say, if you're gonna go hot take, you'd have to say Drake May is going to come back and he's going to be in the early portion MVP conversation of the NFL. Like, you'd have to say stuff like that if you wanted to go viral and be spread everywhere. That's the type of stuff that you clip off and say, oh my goodness, the addition of Stephon Diggs is going to bring out another side of Drake May, similar to when he joined Buffalo and brought out the best side of Josh Allen. Speed on the field offensively is going to open up things and create lanes for Drake May, even as a rusher, but he's going to slide this year, so he's healthy for all 17 games. And that's going to lead him to a breakout season for the New England Patriots.
That's a gold you don't get on Sunday night football night in America. Okay, this is ESPN only. This is so much better than that crap I see before I get to watch a Sunday night game.
I don't even know who they have on Sunday Night Football. I know they got Jason Garrett, Maria Taylor, Kristen, some other guy, ball guy they got.
Well, Jason, I appreciate you. I do appreciate your brother. He joined us on our last stream. So shout out to Devin as well. You guys have been extremely supportive. So really appreciate the time, and thanks so much for joining us.
Always, man. Keep it going, Doug. Hey, good to see you, Andrew.
Great seeing you, Jay.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. All right. We are about to bring on Phil Perry of NBC Sports Boston. Phil, how you doing tonight? Thanks for joining us.
What's up, boys? I'm doing great. I'm ready to put the draft to bed after just putting my kids to bed. And this was like a lot of fun. This weekend was like the most logical draft I feel like the Patriots have had in years, maybe. So we don't have to sit here and kick around why they picked somebody nobody's ever heard of in the 2nd round, which I think is a positive. I'm taking that as a positive.
Yeah, I did want to shout out our sponsor, 5 Horizons. One more time, go to 5horizons.agency. But yeah, what were your overall thoughts on the draft? I already threw out the take that we've been covering the team for about the same amount of time. This is the best I've felt about a Patriots draft on paper, immediately post-draft, since I've been covering the team. So where do you stand on everything they did?
Yeah, I feel the same way, Doug. Honestly, I felt a little uneasy. We do the draft grades in real time.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there giving them A- and A's, and I think maybe there was a B+ mixed in the first 2 days, but it was like through those first 2 days, it was weird.
Yeah.
How strongly I was grading each and every one of their picks. I'm not used to that. And it's not like that doesn't happen every year. Like 2022, I think we all in real time were kind of wondering what was going on. And so, that was looking back, I actually feel pretty good about the in real time grades. And everybody knows that's an exercise in wanting to, hate yourself, months later. But that one actually turned out pretty okay. Yeah. And this one, I just feel like they had a plan clearly. They wanted to surround their young quarterback with talent. They protected him with 2 offensive linemen that I'm very high on. And I know, people throughout the league have been as well. And you got him 2 really explosive weapons. And, my favorite pick maybe of the weekend was a 2nd round pick in Travion Henderson. But Kyle Williams going in the 3rd round, that made a lot of sense to me too. If you're looking to get more explosive, you want to get guys that can take it to the house with any given touch. those are maybe two of the best guys in the draft class for that. So, and then you get good value on guys like Joshua Farmer and Braden Swinson late. So I thought from start to finish, maybe the long snapper pick aside, I thought it was a really strong weekend for them.
So somehow we've already spent 30% of this podcast on Julian Ashby, just because it kicked off with Danny Kelly and Danny Heifetz, who cannot get enough of that. So we will skip the long snapper pick and remind people, if you want to get your question answered by me, Doug, Phil, we have Sam Monson and Steve Palazzolo coming up a little bit later. $10, super chat, donate, whatever you want. You get a raffle ticket for a Patriots signed football. So what else is most interesting to you about this? Like, you know, we can do favorite pick. We've all done the grades, this and that. We talked about Will Campbell in his arms for 4 months. But like Phil Perry's favorite thing about the draft or something around it was blank.
Well, I love the pick of Jared Wilson because I think the center position gets a little underrated. And maybe that's because we've been kind of spoiled in New England where, you know, David Andrews has been at it for so long and just given them such stability there. And I know he's missed time in the last few years and maybe it's become more apparent to people just how important it is to have that position well stocked. But they did a good job. I mean, when Andrews was out the first time around, and they had Ted Karras to lean on. I mean, you had a high caliber, high quality guy to turn to, you know, and Dan Copen for years. And, you know, even Brian Stork is here for 1 year and they go and they win a Super Bowl. So I just feel like that position gets a little, it goes a little under the radar, just how critical it is to have people there who can do the job, not only mentally, but physically too. And I think this guy's such a freak in Jared Wilson. I mean, I just can't get over the fact that he's 110 pounds heavier than Xavier Restrepo, a receiver who's going to play professional football. And he ran a faster 40 time. He ran a 4.8, 4.40, and Xavier Restrepo ran a granted glacial 4.85 40 time for a receiver, but still, like, that is just remarkable athleticism to me. And he played a lot of soccer growing up. And I'm not a scout, but, you know, it makes sense. The guy has pretty good feet and he's a pretty good athlete. So, you know, I look at him and I wonder, there was an interesting question posed tonight on Early Edition about whether or not we could see Jared Wilson actually excelling at his position in a way that maybe Will Campbell doesn't, just because there's been so many questions about, you know, is he going to even stay a tackle? Is he become a guard? And I really like Will Campbell. I thought they should have, you know, it's been months. And I feel like since I have started to feel as though they should take Will Campbell, and they did, and good for them. That was the easy pick to make, in my opinion, and the right pick to make. But is there a world in which Jared Wilson, because he's so athletic, you know, he's a 21-year-old early declare from Georgia, like those guys are usually pretty freaky. Is there a chance he ends up like a top 5 center in this league someday based on the physical qualities almost alone? Whereas, you know, Will Campbell, I don't know if anybody's necessarily projecting that for him at left tackle. It's like, well, he could be a solid, like 10-year in the league left tackle. And, you know, if he's Matt Light, to me, that's a good pick at 4, even though Matt Light was a 2nd round pick. But I don't know if we would ever say Matt Light was like consistently a top 5 tackle in the league. He made an all-pro team, I think, in 2007. And maybe made a Pro Bowl 1 year outside of that 2007 year.
Brian O'Neill, he plays right tackle for the Vikings. Phil has been my very late. Like I was late to the Brian O'Neill comparison, but elite athlete, better, as Doug informed me on my own show on Saturday, than Will Campbell is. But like the arm length wingspan is comparable. So if you're looking for some guy who makes 2 Pro Bowls, and you know he was a 2nd round pick, but similar athletic profile and shortcomings, like you can do that. It's happened. His name is Brian O'Neill. He just plays the right side, and he plays in Minnesota.
So, like, if that's what he is, and Jared Wilson's a top 5 center, like, first of all, your line is in great shape for a long time. But, like, you know, I think that might be Wilson's ceiling because he does meet just about every metric physically. I mean, for Campbell, to me, the ceiling is like Rashawn Slater. Rashawn Slater is 33-inch arms and plays left tackle, and he actually plays it so well. They drafted a prototypical left tackle a couple of seasons ago in Joe Alt, and they made him play on the right side because they've got this other guy who's doing a damn good job on the left side. So, you know, Will Campbell to me is a really special athlete. I don't know if he'll hit that ceiling. I think Slater's already made 2 Pro Bowls. So I don't know if he'll get there, but in terms of some of the measurements and the athletic traits, I think that would be sort of what you're hoping for if you're a Patriots fan from Will Campbell.
Yeah, it is funny because obviously left tackle has so much more positional value than running back or center. But I think a case to be made that, like, in a vacuum for those positions, Trevion Henderson and Jared Wilson might actually have more upside for their positions than Will Campbell does. So that's an interesting point. The other thing with Jared Wilson, and I won't go long on this, but it's unfortunate the way the timing worked because obviously you can't predict who you wind up with in the draft, but like if the Patriots had known that they were going to wind up with Jared Wilson, don't you just not move on from David Andrews? Like, don't you not do the whole Garrett Bradbury thing? And don't you just like let that be a smooth transition from David Andrews to Jared Wilson? Obviously it didn't work out that way, but it's kind of unfortunate that it didn't and that they couldn't predict that they'd get this guy in the draft.
Yeah, it's just strange. I don't know. I would agree with that. That feels like it makes a lot of sense to me, Doug.
Right.
It just feels as though the team was just really wanting to move on from him.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't know that Garrett Bradbury was going to, even be available to them.
Yeah.
They were ready to go into the draft with, I guess, Ben Brown as their projected starter at center. So it just feels as though, and same is true with the long snapper pick. I don't know if you guys have talked about the Joe Cardona era, but it just feels like they are just moving on from just about anybody in that locker room that had significant ties to the old regime. So I'm not sure they would have changed their ways there. But that might be, to me, the Wilson pick might be the best value of the weekend. I think Swinson, you could certainly make the argument there too. To me, the most fun pick, and the guy that I think he's got a chance, guys. This might be my hot take of the night here. I think Travion Henderson has a chance to be in the conversation for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Ooh, wow.
I think he's that good. I think his role will be that significant right away. Ramondre Stevenson, we know, has a fumbling problem. I don't think Travion Henderson is necessarily going to be their 3-down back to start, but I think he's going to get a lot of work. I think they're going to spread it out a lot. They're going to be in a lot of passing situations. They could be down in a fair number of games here. I know some people are projecting them to make the postseason. I'm not quite there yet, but they're going to be down. They're going to have him on the field, and I think he's just such a weapon. He's just so explosive, and even when you do hand it off to him, I think Dane Brugler had a great note in the Beast that I think it was like over a fifth of his carries went for 10 yards or more. I mean, like something absurd like that. And again, he's making a jump from college to the pros, and it'll be a little bit different. But he's so fast. He's physical enough. I mean, he's more than physical enough in pass protection. So again, I think he's going to be on the field a ton. And you put all the running back catches together last year between Stevenson and Gibson, and others in that room. And I'm not saying he'll get them all, right, but Drake May threw it a bunch to the running back last year. And so if that happens again this year, I think his numbers could be pretty good. And so, there's that Travis Hunter guy in Jacksonville who I think is a hell of a player, and he's probably the front runner, and with good reason. But I think Henderson could surprise some people and get a lot of work and be really productive.
Let's get a super chat question in here real quick. Roy Brady, good luck with the fundraiser. Do you guys think Jalen Polk will have a rebound this year? We can touch on this quickly because we talked about him a little bit. I mean, my take on this is that if the front office and if the coaching staff had a ton of faith in Jalen Polk, I don't know if you draft Kyle Williams in the 3rd round. I think that you bank on Jalen Polk to be a guy who takes a big leap this year. And the fact that they did still draft Kyle Williams that early, I don't think they're banking on it. I know some people within the building still like Jalen Polk. They think he might be better in the slot. So maybe we'll see some more inside snaps for Jalen Polk. I definitely think there's a possibility he can do it, but it doesn't feel like anyone is banking on that right now.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I think it would be irresponsible to bank on it. Like, just based on what you saw last year and based on, quite frankly, how you saw him handle a tough situation, right? I think that was the biggest piece of it. I think that's what surprised people most in the building was he was going to be this dog for them. He was going to do all the little things. He was going to do the dirty work, and he was going to be a pro from day one. And I'm not saying he was a negative influence or anything like that, but I think just they were surprised at how he handled his own version of adversity last season. Right. And so I don't know. Can he climb his way out of that? Sure. I would say it's a possibility. My guess, he's going to be on the roster. He's a 2nd-round pick. My guess is they're not going to get rid of him. Like Duke Dawson, I think, was the last time we saw a 2nd-round pick not make the team going into his 2nd year, if I have that right. So we have seen that before too. But I think I like your idea, Doug, about putting him in the slot, because Josh McDaniels is going to want those guys inside to block. Yeah. And while I think Pop Douglas satisfies a lot of what McDaniels has looked for in the past in terms of being able to get open early and run those little option routes and having the kind of juice to be able to do that sort of stuff, I don't think he's blocking anyone. Like, he's just not built for that. He is what he is in terms of his size. And the comps for Polk coming out of school, I don't know, what you guys heard talking to people, but I remember a year ago this time, everybody saying he's Jacoby Myers.
Right.
He's Jacoby Myers. So like, okay, be Jacoby Myers in the Josh McDaniels offense. That was one thing that I found interesting. And I'd love to hear you guys on the Kyle Williams pick. Because that was one thing I found interesting. And it's a second guess that I have with Jalen Knoll still on the board, who to me is a more polished player. And that's sort of, the description that I heard. More of a true slot, maybe more of a polished player, more of a classic slot that Josh McDaniels would use in his offense with the 4.39 speed on top of it. Whereas Kyle Williams is more of an outside receiver and super fast in his own right, better after the catch. It's a really interesting comp because they're like really similar in terms of their sizes and their frames, but they're very different players. They came out of this draft without to me like a defined Josh McDaniels slot. So is it Pop? Is it Jalen Polk? Is it Efton Chisholm? Like, who the hell know? Like, I would love for that to happen. I love watching the 5 minutes I've watched of Efton Chisholm. He looks like a hell of a player, and could be a lot of fun in this offense. But that was one thing I thought they might try to draft this year, and they didn't. And so I was curious if you guys felt as though like the Williams pick is going to change the offense, if it's going to be as productive as people are hoping for, because we just since Randy Moss, we just haven't seen like a burner on the outside, like really dominate in this Josh McDaniels offense.
Efton Chisholm, by the way, his 40 about as fast as Jared Wilson. So put him in the 4.8 club as we were talking about Restrepo earlier. Look, Williams was my favorite pick of their entire class. And it's just a profile of a player that you haven't seen it work in the Josh McDaniels offense. I think the McDaniels offense would have worked, frankly, better if you had a separator on the outside that was that consistent against man-to-man coverage and then brought speed to take the top off the defense. His release package is really encouraging to me, like off of the line. And there's stuff in between in the route, maybe at the top of the route that he needs to sort through. But there's just a guy that if he gets it early, he'll be fine at least the rest of the rookie season. So I just like that they have options. Like Jalen Polk can't totally bank on his draft status. And people forget he had a good training camp, decent preseason last year. That's not enough to give you cause for hope. But they have options where if Kyle Williams struggles, hey, we'll go to that guy. And Kayshon Boutte's still hanging around. So we'll see. But I love the Williams pick, and I hope he succeeds because I think he's got the highest ceiling out of anyone I just listed.
We're going to bring in Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson, two of my favorite guys I worked with at PFF right now. But Phil, I did still need someone donate $20. Money for Cancer to encourage Phil to recreate his draft drunk long snapper in the 7th rant. Even if it's brief, I think we just need this because someone did donate the money to hear it.
Yeah. So what happened was Tom Curran and I, our good friend Tom Curran, we were podcasting for the very end of the draft, and Curran saw that they drafted a long snapper. He goes, "Okay, there's your long snapper. That's the old Bill Belichick memorial pick. You take a long snapper. He's from Vanderbilt. Bill was, grew up in, was born in Nashville, Tennessee. I think that's the connection for Bill." And I said, "Wait, hold on. We're not just moving on from that. Can I be angry about this for a second? Like, we're all sitting around following all these picks. It's very late on day 3. I mean, the draft is interminable enough as it is. So we're going to sit around and we're going to watch a long snapper get drafted at the end. And no disrespect to the guy they chose or his family. Like, congratulations to him, Mazel Tov. But I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the best available and Steve, Willie Lampkin's available. What are we doing? Not drafting Willie Lampkin. We're drafting a long snapper? What are we? We're not drafting Holland Pierce? Is that the monster? He's like
Rutgers,
a 7-foot tackle from Rutgers. We're drafting a long snapper here. Really? This is what we're doing? It felt a little too Belichickian for me. So that was essentially the rant. That was like a 30-second version of it.
Perfect.
Solid.
Well, thank you, Phil. We're going to get you out of here. Thanks so much for coming on and joining us. It's always great to have you. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, pal.
Steve and Sam from Mike Check Podcast or Check the Mike Podcast for the 33rd team. Steve, Sam, how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well.
Great.
How about you, Doug?
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
We are doing well. We've raised a lot of money. Thank you guys for your contributions as well to encourage your listeners to donate. Let's kick this thing off with, first of all, I'll go to you,
real quick,
Steve.
Doug.
Oh, yeah,
Let me interrupt you really quick. Can we
Yes.
start with this? On behalf of the Check the Mike podcast, we would like to donate $1,000 to kick things off.
Thank you.
As a podcast, we're going to do that, and then we're going to encourage our listeners to donate as long as we can, and then we'll match whatever they donate as well. So you get at least $1,000, and then whatever else our listeners can come up with. Appreciate what you're doing here, man.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciate that, guys. That is huge. Thank you so much. And your listeners have been donating already. So you guys have got your work cut out for you to match all that as well. But so, yeah, Steve or Sam, I'll kick this to you. What were your thoughts overall on the Patriots draft?
I like the draft overall. In fact, I really like the draft overall. One of my favorites in the entire NFL. You know, the top of the draft, the Will Campbell pick. It's the one move they had to make. You know, I think we can debate what exactly Will Campbell is. Obviously, drafting him at 4 overall, they've made the declaration that he's a tackle rather than a guard with those measurables. And they put themselves in that position. You know, they hadn't been able to fill the offensive line needs anywhere else. So you had to take your favorite guy. And if that's Will Campbell, if it's Armand Membu, whoever it is, I think they needed to reach a little bit at the top of this draft to make that pick. But from that point on, I think they've got a bunch of really fantastic players that can all really help this offense. Travion Henderson, I think, is a really good running back and also really good in a couple of different areas that they are not particularly strong at. He might be the best pass protecting back to come into the league in years. So immediately you can potentially upgrade the pass protection in terms of blitz pickup, in terms of the running back position, as well as the offensive line. Kyle Williams, I love as a receiver, might be the best separator in the entire draft. Jared Wilson at center, I think, is a sneaky upgrade as well in the offensive line. And then Braden Swinson later in the draft is one of the steals of the entire draft. I think that guy was a borderline, back end of or front of day 2, back end of day 1. It wouldn't have shocked me if he'd snuck into the first round based off his tape. So to snag him later in the draft, I think that's an absolute steal.
Yeah, and I said earlier, Braden Swinson was my favorite pick of the draft for the Patriots, and seems like might have been some maturity things that had him slide a little bit. The fact that he only really stood out 1 year, but he has the upside to be a really great designated pass rusher for the Patriots. So, Steve, what were your thoughts overall on the draft?
A lot of similarities. I think, when I go back and, would I have picked different players in a different order, perhaps? Maybe. But I think when you look at the haul overall and you look at what they did in free agency, right? It was so defense heavy, and you guys probably answered a million questions. What about left tackle and what about playmaker? That's all you've been talking about for the last couple of months, right? And the way the board fell is you got to get a Kyle Williams in the 3rd, and you get to get a Travion Henderson. And so you've got some playmakers, you get the Will Campbell pick. And so I think when you look at the haul as a whole, which includes a Braden Swinson in the 5th. So I agree with a lot of what Sam said, like a lot of the same players. I think overall they got better. And they took advantage of having, the extra pick in the 3rd and picking high in the draft. And you should come away with good players. I think it feels a lot better than last year's draft. I thought even last year they had high, they were picking high, and it didn't feel great after Drake May. And obviously it didn't turn out great in a couple instances. And it feels like you got more backups and rotational players. I think they're getting impact players here, particularly on the offense. I really love Travion Henderson as a running back. I think every time I watched him, as a fan watching Ohio State, you remember the big plays that he would make. But going back and watching the film, I was impressed with just how he picked up 4 when it was there, and he picked up 6 when it was there. And I thought he did a nice job staying on schedule as a runner, and then also hitting the home runs when they were available. And then everything Sam said about, pass protection, and he's also, you could move him outside and line him up as a wide receiver, and he can create mismatches out of the backfield. So there's a lot you can do with Travion Henderson. And again, Kyle Williams, I think a lot of fans of him throughout the draft process. And if you just look at the Senior Bowl and his route running, I think he adds, quite a dimension to this offense. So I really like what they've added offensively.
So Steve and Sam, it's great to talk with you. Steve, I think I've shaken your hand maybe 3 times. Sam, good to talk with you for the first time. Reading between the lines of your comments here, though, I think I have to season this because Doug and I do not argue very often. We've worked together for a year and a half. The Travion Henderson pick, though, sparks one argument that is ongoing. Sam suggested a different order of draft picks that he would have seized on. And Steve, I think you had great words for Travion. I concur with a lot of them. I wouldn't have gone running back at 38th. Are we in silent agreement here, or where's the value conversation for you guys there at 38?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think we're all kind of aligned on that. Particularly the way the wide receivers fell in this draft. That was the other element, is that a lot of those guys that we thought could go in the first round slipped into the second, and all of a sudden you've got a really impressive kind of group of receivers available then. So when they made the Travion Henderson pick, I didn't love it. But when you then go, well, okay, but the next round they got Kyle Williams at the top of that round, that sort of salves the wound to me. Like I'm generally this is an amazing running back class. I mean, who was it? Washington ended up getting McCourty, Krosky, Merritt in like the 7th round he could be a starter for that team, right? So really good running back slipped all the way through this draft. So I wouldn't have been targeting one at the top of the 2nd round or the bottom of the 1st, the way some teams did. But if you're then going to tell me, well, okay, we're going to take this running back at the top of the 2nd, but we'll get Kyle Williams in the 3rd. Are you cool with it now? Then I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm happy now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of Patriots fans wanted Luther Burden there at the top of the 2nd round.
Yeah.
Sounds like they were considering taking the Arizona guard at number 38 overall. But yeah, and like I think a lot of people also wanted Donovan Ezeraku, the BC pass rusher, and that would have been a good pick at the time. But landing Braden Swinson at the top of the 5th round once again makes you think like, all right, well, it all kind of worked out for them anyway. Like, would you rather have Ezeraku? Yeah, but if you can get Braden Swinson a little bit later, it eases those wounds a little bit.
That was my feeling on it, right? I mean, yeah, I'm with you, Andrew. I wouldn't take the running back that high when you have that many needs, and I'm just crazy when it comes to trenches and playmakers and receivers. Like, if they got Luther Burden and Kyle Williams, is anybody arguing? Is anybody saying nope, don't want that? Right? You'd be sitting here saying, all right, they doubled down again. And you'd be talking about who gets cut, and that's a good problem to have at a receiver position that's been among the league's worst for a few years now. So, yeah, I think there's other options in there. But again, when you look at the entire haul, I'm just like, hey, I see a path to the field for Trevion Henderson, for Kyle Williams, for Jared Wilson, and so I think you're going to get instant impact. I also think, I think I mentioned on our show today, the offensive line still might take a year. I mean, we still might look, might temper expectations for rookie offensive linemen. If Wilson's starting at center and Campbell's starting at left tackle, still might be a year, but I think it's much better than it was last year, and there's at least some hope there. So I think overall, again, it's a really nice group that I think will make an impact.
So I appreciate you indulging me in that. I mean, one of the least favorite things I hear on podcasts are people asking for their own purposes. So I'm going to use this as a vehicle to ask you guys if there's an area then that like you would also nitpick on the roster, right? Like you get to be GM for a week, and this is a player we want to target or sign or pursue or ask about a trade. Like what are you looking for next if you're the Patriots? Great draft. There's still more work to do. The first item in that to-do list is what for both of you?
Sam, do you have anything you want me to go?
Go first.
I mean, there's still receiver depth. I mean, there's still dynamic playmakers. Someone asked me in the chat about Kyle Williams. I had him out of my top 10 as far as receivers go, but I'm not wedded to all my receiver takes, but there's other receivers I liked. I mean, if they got Luther Burden and Kyle Williams, or Luther Burden and Cam Scatterbo, put in your next favorite running back in the 3rd round, I'm probably even more excited because I'm more excited about Luther Burden's upside. So a dynamic playmaker, the theoretical field stretching dynamic playmaker that isn't available because everybody keeps their own. So I think that's still an issue. And I think there's still probably darts to be thrown on the offensive line. They're getting better, but I think there's still more depth pieces to be looked at there. And then I would just look at, I think edge rush is in a much better spot. I'm not that high on Harold Landry. I think Keon White, you add Braden Swinson. The depth is so much better, but I don't want to say it's year one of the rebuild. It's year one of Vrabel's rebuild. So you can't solve everything, but I think depth in both trenches and just a more dynamic playmaker wherever you can get that guy from, is still a need, we'll say, for the Patriots.
I think a lot of it is going to be, it's going to have to wait and see what it looks like on the field, because there's so many players where the range of outcomes is really quite broad, and it's difficult to know what exactly they have right now and what's going to work out and what isn't. Like, a lot of people really liked Jalen Polk a year ago, including me. I thought he was a really good player. Yeah. I mean, even relative to where I liked him, they drafted him pretty high. But what we saw from him year one was so far away from what everyone expected him to do that it's pretty shocking if he just provides nothing, right? If he was just a complete and total bust and he's out the door, either before this season or sometime after the season. So, if he becomes something, well, then that changes the dynamic of the receiving core a little bit. Also, Stephon Diggs, we don't know what he's going to look like coming back off an ACL and how big of a factor he's going to be. So Kyle Williams is a rookie. We like him as one of the best separators in the draft, but he was somebody that people were debating, well, can he play outside? Can he bring more than just sort of separation? Can he also be a vertical threat? And sort of how much of that traditional X receiver skill set can he bring as well? So I think that whole receiving core is very much a movable, sort of fluid, dynamic thing at the moment. It's going to take a while into this season before we figure out exactly like which pieces are long-term, how much of this needs to be upgraded, and where you still need to keep adding. I think the same thing's true with, pass rush and a couple of other parts of the roster too.
Let's before we get you guys out of here, and thank you guys again so much for the donation and for getting your listeners involved and everything. And thanks again for joining us. We've got a UDFA question from Andrew Callahan. My niece is battling ALL. You guys are doing great for this. Lan Larison, Efton Chisholm, CJ Dipree all seem like high-profile UDFAs. Can you see any actually making the roster? And then I would throw in the quarterback as well. Ben Wooldridge is their third quarterback right now. CJ Dipree was the guy that I had making the 53-man roster in my 53-man roster projection, just because there's so little depth at tight end otherwise for the Patriots. They've got Jaheim Bell, who didn't do a whole lot last year, Jack Westover. They just cut Giovanni Ricci. So, like, if there's going to be a guy, it could be a tight end if they don't add anyone else. But I don't know how deeply you guys have looked into some of the Patriots UDFA signings, but anyone stand out for you guys?
Lan Larison is making the roster. I'm just saying it now. He's making the roster.
All right.
They're going to fall in love with this kid. He is one of the best receiving running backs in this draft class. If you even just search his name on Twitter, right? Don't even bother finding like serious sources of tape. Just search his name on Twitter and count the number of absurd one-handed catches you see from him. He has one of the best one-handed catch reels of any player in this draft. Not running back, like wide receiver, tight end, any player. The dude has amazing hands. He can run routes. He's a big body receiving kind of body. He ran a 4.4 or something at his pro day. Like, he's an athlete as well. And like, if he can play any kind of special teams, I would say he's making the roster.
You know how Bailey Zappi came in on that Monday night game and Gillette was like as loud as it was since an AFC championship. I mean, that's
Zappy. Yeah.
Get ready. Lan Larison is going to be the biggest cult hero since Scal in the city. I mean, it's what's happening. Lan Larison absolutely making the team, and he's going to be a massive fan favorite during training camp.
Is there something that Lan Larison and Scal have in common, aside from playing in New England, that might make them a fan favorite?
That's really aggressive prediction from me there, right? Wait till his first one hit. Listen, if you guys want some clicks on X, just watch him during training camp. He's going to make one of those one-handed catch. It's going to take off. That's what you got to do. Watch Lan the entire time.
Well, thank you guys again so much for joining us. We'll let you get out of here and we'll wrap up the show on our own. But Steve, Sam, you guys are the best. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank
really
you guys.
appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Doug.
All right, Andrew, let's head out of here. Let's end on a high note. First of all, big, huge thanks to CLNS for producing this. Big thanks to John Zanis, to Amit, all the work that they've done. Want to shout out our sponsor one more time. And that is 5 Horizons. You can go to 5horizons.agency. And let's get into some of these leftover super chats before we get out of here as well. Andrew, did you have one that you want to pull up?
Yeah, we get a couple, and I want to shout out the people who have repeatedly donated and asked questions. And look, that's the deal here,
100%.
right? Like, you have some money, we guarantee you an answer. Daisy Mahowski multiple times jumping in, Kyle Marston, folks like that.
Yeah.
Like, again, all the money's going to the best possible cause, so thank you. This is from like an hour and a half ago, so I hope like Full Man VR is still hanging out, $20. The chances that Stefon Diggs doesn't land on PUP and is ready for week 1 due to all the training content he's put out.
It's tough to say. It really is. It looks like he's doing well. It looks like, he's healing really fast. But when I think about this, I think back to Kendrick Bourne, where he was 29 last year, tore his ACL. Like, he tore his ACL, I think, on October 31st. Stefon Diggs tore his on October 29th. So it was like within 2 days of each other. I don't know which one was which, but within 2 days of each other, a year apart. And Kendrick Bourne didn't come back until week 5. And he was 29 at the time. Stefon Diggs is 31. I think he's going to be 32 this year. He's also on that same timeline. Like, he tore his ACL in late October. So I think the expectation should probably be that he might miss some time. We don't know that for sure. Like I said, training videos look awesome. at the end of the day, if he misses 4 weeks, it's not the end of the world. It allows the Patriots to keep one of their other young wide receivers for a few more weeks, sort out that positional group. You would love to have Stephon Diggs week 1, still possible. They're saying all the right things about it. I don't think they should try to rush him. I don't think that we should try to rush the expectations there.
Yeah, and you bring up Kendrick Bourne, which is a great comparison, not because he's on the Patriots, but the age timeline. And Kendrick Bourne was also someone who had a trainer move in with him like for months at a time to help rehab and do everything around the clock for that ACL. And the Patriots still were like, we're going to take it easy, right? We're going to slow you down. I think with Stephon Diggs, not only just because of the money they've invested, but the fact that it's very likely he won't get a ton of reps with Drake May in training camp. Yeah. I think it's pretty good. Now, we should know that his trainer, who spoke with Mark Daniels over at Mass Live, was like, I've never seen anyone recover this fast. Mm-hmm. And if we're being real, like people that we speak to sometimes in that arena, run a business, speak with us, want to put their name out there. Say, hey, if you train with me, the unspoken thing is you will also be ahead of schedule if you ever tear your ACL. Yep. Adam Schefter has also said he's on pace to be ready for week 1. The bottom line is this will be up to Jim Whalen, their head trainer, as much as Mike Vrabel. If Mike Vrabel says we'll see you in week 5, the most important football is in November and December, that's what's going to happen. So I trust that Stephon Diggs is working his ass off. We don't particularly know. I would just put these odds at under 50%, given everything we just kind of detailed there, age timeline, and what the Patriots might want to do with it. But look, we both want to see him week 1. We can be open about that, yeah?
No, I mean, absolutely. I would love to see him in week 1. I think that would be big. I think it would be big for Drake May. I'd like to see him in a full season. I think that he would love to play full season. I think he'd like to get back to having 1,000 yards. But it's just about, once again, just look back at Bourne's timeline last year, and they're around the same age. So, yeah.
I'll say this, too. We heard from someone, we were at the league meetings, who knows Stephon pretty well. And their suggestion was he's at his best coming off of fresh money. So it's kind of the opposite when you get these guys who get big contracts and then they're like, I made it. No, he's ready to go. And it will be a dynamic to watch throughout the season of how much he's playing, how much he's getting the ball. He should be calling for it. Because he is the best receiver by a mile when healthy in that room. Again, it's just a matter of when healthy is the big caveat there.
We do have another question from Daisy My Husky. With no Pac-12, Wazoo played on an easier schedule that coincided with Kyle Williams' best season. Is it fair to be concerned over the rise in his 2024 production being a result of the lower competition? I think it's fair. I mean, I think you can still look at him as a player. You look at the measurables, you look at the speed, you look at his ability to beat man coverage and get open and all those things. And you see all of the traits. But yeah, I mean, anytime that a guy is coming from a lower level competition, the way that Washington State played this year, you have to factor that into the evaluation, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the production, right? I mean, at 13, 14 touchdowns and over 2,000 yards in the last 2 seasons combined, but that doesn't tell the whole story. I mean, his release package isn't a little bit different because, sometimes it wasn't, pick your top corner, Travis Hunter, who actually scored a long touchdown on across from him versus someone who was at Montana State, all due respect. So, yeah, I think the context is key, but I'm not going to just call it a schedule layup as the reason that he got to score 40 points. It's like he shot some contested shots too, because think about this, like those defenses, particularly bad ones, are going to go, hey, we need to double him. He's the biggest problem on the field, and he succeeded despite that attention. So we got one more here in another draft pick. Kyle's asking Phil, who's left, that he mentioned a possible injury flag, and other people have said this with Joshua Farmer from Florida State. Could you elaborate on that more? Joshua Farmer played a lot last year. He did have a thumb issue going back, I think, a little over a year that kept him out for a couple of games. To me, Doug, like as I dug into this Saturday, there's not a whole lot there, maybe like some long-term concerns, but I think it's more that Joshua Farmer, from a production standpoint, athletic testing was like just above average. And so a player like that sometimes will just fall when you're like, well-rounded, good player. And if you're a 4-down team that's like, we just want to penetrate and go, and there's a lot of that here now with Vrabel, but you just go, we're not in a rush to get them. Like those guys tend to fall sometimes, the jack of all trades masters.
Yeah, I actually asked about Joshua Farmer today as well, asking if there was any sort of like character concerns or anything, just because like when you see a guy fall like that, you ask questions about like why this might have happened. And I heard like it's nothing bad, like might be like I don't know. He's a defensive lineman, so sometimes those guys can be a little bit different personality wise. So nothing of concern there. But what I heard is that, like, depending on who you asked around the league, you would get far different answers about the talent level for Joshua Farmer. Some people were just much higher on him than other people. So I think that can also be a cause for a player falling, where, like, even within buildings, people being split on Joshua Farmer. So maybe that can ultimately drag a guy down from being a 3rd round pick or a 2nd round pick. It sounded like he expected to go very early, but, like, he's got the traits. He ran a 5.15. He got 35-inch arms. He played a decent amount at Florida State. He was productive. I think that, like, there's a path for him playing a lot of snaps for the Patriots in 2025. And, like, he has to show it. He has to do it on the practice field. But, like, if you're looking at that defensive line depth right now, there's not a lot of guys who are 100% ahead of Joshua Farmer on the defensive tackle depth chart. It's basically Milton Williams and Christian Barmore if he's healthy. Because you get beyond that, Eric Johnson did not play a lot last year. Jeremiah Farms, he's been playing over his
happy to be in the league.
And,
yeah.
What was that?
Happy. The alum of Friends University is just happy to have friends and still be in the league. Like, he's a hardworking, good dude. Not the disrespect.
Not someone you would predict to play 470 snaps the way they did last year.
Yeah.
Jaquelin Roy hasn't played a lot during his career. Even Kairos Tonga, who the Patriots signed this offseason, like, he'll probably wind up being, depending on Christian Barmore's availability, that number 2 or 3 defensive tackle. But, like, Joshua Farmer, if he has a good camp, if he has good practice, like, he can be a potential starter as a 4th round pick, which sounds a little absurd, but, like, that's what you're looking at as far as the rest of the defensive tackle depth goes right now.
Yeah, a couple more things on that. Very deep defensive line class, as we saw and heard. He was the target on the one trade up the Patriots made all draft. So obviously they believe in him in addition to making him a selection. And he's someone who can play in multiple alignments. Like you saw, they didn't do a ton of 2-gapping at Florida State, between that length and the prototypical size. Like, you could have him as a 5 technique, and maybe you want to have him as like a one shade over the center. Like that might be a possibility between those. So it'll depend on what Vrabel wants to do, how the rest of the talent kind of coalesces around them. But look, when we talk about the rookies and the opportunity and how much they might play, it's not only just about how good the player is, right? It's about how much opportunity there is for a rebuilding team with new coaching staff, tweaked or entirely new systems that they're going to be learning. The variance here for what the Patriots could be in 2025 is so wide. And that is on a macro level. It's down on a micro level to the 3rd, 4th defensive tackle that we've been discussing, which makes this the most fun training camp and season that as we kind of wrap up here and look ahead, at least since 2021 with Mac Jones and all that big free agent class. And before that, I don't know, the end of the Brady years, which is awesome. Like, this is no longer going to be the same problems and the same stories they've endured. The offensive line's not going to be great. You have answers now. You've got plan Bs. You've got a young depth. You've got playmakers. This is going to be a fun team.
We're going to take one more question, then we're going to end this because we've already been doing this for 2.5 hours. But one more last question from Daisy Marhusky. Thank you so much for all the super chats, for all the questions. Last question. Now that I regularly watch your videos, it was super cool to recognize your voices in the media interviews. What's the most interesting thing you heard from any of our new draftees? I'm going to answer this first because you were actually in on more of the interviews than I was this year, just because of the way that we were divvying up our work. So I might be stealing yours, but I'll give the answers so that you can think of a different one. The most interesting thing for me was Joshua Farmer being so psyched about meeting Milton Williams when he was on his 30 visit that he actually, like, pulled up his phone and showed a picture of him and Milton Williams next to each other. Like, he got a picture with Milton Williams inside the facility. So that's what it really meant a lot to him to have been drafted by the Patriots. It meant a lot for him because it feels like he was really excited about that 30 visit they took with the Patriots. Really excited to talk to Clint McMillan, who actually coached Joshua Farmer at Florida State. He felt like it was fate for him to come to the Patriots. And it was cool to see him actually pull up that picture of him and Milton Williams to show you after you asked him a question about it.
Okay. I'm going to give you one for the first 7 picks. You ready?
Yes.
Number 1, Will Campbell, we already discussed this, being caught seeing the Bass Pro Shops at the distance and says that, Dad, that's where I'm going to hunt, like Matt Light did, which is the most niche, deep-seated reference that we've had in Patriots content in the last 3 months, and Will Campbell absolutely nailed it. Number 2, we had Travion Henderson, who was shocked because he remembered just one meeting with the Patriots. Elliot Wolf since corrected it, but said, yeah, I talked with Tony Dews, the running backs coach, on a Zoom, and that was it. I don't know how they picked me. I don't know why they picked me. Seems like a very nice guy, but definitely talked to the Patriots more than that. Number 3 was Kyle Williams, who just told us straight up, hey, could you just describe your game? He had 3 words: versatile, game-changing, electric. Okay.
That's all you need.
Done. Jared Wilson. The man loves snakes. This was like a late day 2, Friday night, loopy question for me. Just give us a fun fact about you. We've done all the football stuff. His mom gifted him a ball python when he was 12, and then married or got in a relationship with then his stepdad, who said, nope, that thing is not crossing the door to my house. That is gone. So the ball python is left. He intends to get a snake a little bit later, which brings us to Craig Woodson, who I asked, hey, you're supposedly this, very intelligent football player. Obviously, you played 6 years at Cal. You went to Cal. And I said, can you just give us an example? And he details off the top of his head, shout out Keegan Stifle, who tweeted the clip and then found the play that Craig was talking about, where he recognized in a 3rd and 6, the motion from a receiver, creating a tight split, creating a drive concept, which is just a shallow cross, and then basically a dig behind it, and said, I knew it was the drive, and he's playing the rat. He just goes into all the terminology, but right off the top of his head, he was ready. Joshua Farmer being like, F this wasn't supposed to happen, chip on his shoulder, and then all the stuff that you talked about. And then the last one here from Braden Swinson was talking about Will Campbell. It's like, hey, can you just, I guess these are all my questions. This is like a not so subtle way of bragging, but we got good stuff from him. And he said, Will Campbell's voice is not a 21. He's got that old man voice. Like he's just serious about his business. And it sounds ridiculous, but we had already heard Will Campbell speak 2 nights earlier. And God damn it, Braden Swinson's really right. Like you just hear it and be like, there's something here that's older than a guy who just turned 21 in January. So there's a lot of stuff there from these guys. And we will be speaking with them again. I can tell you May 9th, which will be rookie minicamp, which I don't know if we're going to be at the full practice, but we will talk to them then. So if you want to see more videos, the team will have them then. And then Austin Hooper and Caleb on Chason are talking tomorrow with Gillette. So something for you there tomorrow to tide you over.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again to everyone. You can still donate to my fundraising campaign honoring my daughter Hallie at princessHallieForever.com. Thank you everyone for all the super chats, for all the donations. It's been hard to keep track of everything that's been coming in, but this was amazing. Thank you guys so much. Shout out again to CLNS, to John Zanis, to Amit. We're going to get you guys out of here soon so you can stop producing this. And then once again, just a shout out to 5 Horizons. Once again, the website there is 5horizons.agency if you want to connect and explore how they can support your vision from SEO and social media to website design. They do everything. So go to 5 Horizons. And Andrew, we good? Do you have anything left to say?
No, we're good. Look,
did I forget anything?
These are a treat to do with you, to hang out. It's too bad that Fitzy got so wasted and was so delirious from the A++ Patriots draft. That was everywhere. That no one's seen him. It was a fake Fitzy on the radio today, but we wish the best for him. And look, I would do anything to help support the cause, the campaign. I just want to shout out Sam Monson and Steve, cousin Steve, because for an incredibly 100%. Generous donation and the match and all of their fans and listeners. Like those guys are the best, and I hardly know them. They're strangers to me, but this is the best way to spend a Monday night. So thank you to the near 9,000 of you currently listening here at the very end, even though we're wrapping up. So
yes,
let's wrap up.
All right. Well, we will talk to you guys again. Follow my podcast, Pat's Chat, follow Andrew, Pat's Interference, follow all of the CLNS stuff, and we will talk to you guys again soon on some platform. So thanks again for watching and joining.